Prior to this, Yang Kai wasn't quite sure how much the soul chains were affecting him, but when they were finally unlocked, he was able to realize the profoundness of this soul skill. It could not only link the lives of two people, but it was also capable of producing warm intentions between them for no reason, making them reluctant to leave one another. Yang Kai couldn't help wondering about what would have been the case if it wasn't Xueyu who had used the soul chains, but instead it was an old man or woman with their neck half buried in the grave. Would he have also felt a deep sense of affection for them? Thinking about such a possibility, Yang Kai suddenly shivered. But now that the soul chains had been completely lifted by the two sides' mutual agreement, those illusionary feelings had also disappeared, and now, besides some slight regret, Yang Kai no longer felt loath to part with her. Regardless of appearance, identity, or cultivation, Xueyu was an outstanding woman, and any man who missed a chance to be with her would certainly feel a sense of regret. The moment the soul chains were unlocked, Yang Kai reached out and tore space, escaping 1,000 kilometers away. Xueyu had told him up front that once she was free from the constraints of the soul chains, she didn't know how she would react. Yang Kai could only assume she would act ruthlessly against him. He knew too many of her secrets and had taken advantage of her so much that, with her vicious temperament, it would be strange if she just let him leave safely. That's why Yang Kai first left Rainfall Star on his star shuttle and only unlocked the soul chains with Xueyu at the furthest distance possible. It was all in order to give himself a head start in escaping in case Xueyu turned on him on the spot. After tearing space 10 times in succession, traveling 10,000 kilometers in a blink of an eye, Yang Kai threw a spiritual energy, restoring pill into his mouth, while urging his star shuttle forward to continue his escape. He could clearly feel a murderous intent behind him, like a shadow following him. 10 days later, somewhere amidst the vast star field, Yang Kai sat cross-legged atop his star shuttle as it flew forward. The star shuttle had been imprinted with a star chart Yang Kai made personally and was moving towards a distant location. Rainfall Star had long ago disappeared, and when he looked back he could only see indistinct flickering stars. After flying for more than 10 days without any pursuing troops catching up, Yang Kai felt he should be safe. Otherwise, with the resources at Xueyu's disposal, she would have caught up to him long ago. He had even come up with a number of contingency plans, the last of which was to simply hide in the void, denying Xueyu any opportunity to catch him. Just as he felt relieved, though, Yang Kai faintly felt a set of life auras enter the range of his divine sense. Using thin divine sense threads joined together with his comprehension of the Tao of space, Yang Kai was quickly able to analyze the strength of these people before they could possibly be aware of him. 3 people, all of them first-order Saint Kings, each one traveling on their own star shuttle and moving quickly in his direction. Yang Kai could also tell that they had been flying through the star field for quite some time, with each of them having expended a great deal of energy. Had they come chasing him on Xueyu's orders? Or did they just happen to be passing through? Yang Kai couldn't judge, choosing to hide his aura and change direction. Regardless of this group's intent, Yang Kai first planned to avoid them in order to not stir up trouble. But to his surprise, after changing directions several times in succession, the 3 pursuing him continued to follow flies drawn to honey, closing the distance between them with each passing moment. If Yang Kai hadn't figured out what the purpose of these 3 people was by now, he would have lived his life in vain. These 3 people were definitely a pursuit force sent out by Xueyu, otherwise their goal wouldn't have been so obvious. Sitting on his star shuttle, Yang Kai squinted towards the rear, not continuing to flee. What did Xueyu mean with this action? Did she want these 3 first-order Saint Kings to bring him back? She was well aware of his strength. Back on Water Moonstar, at just the second-order Saint Realm, he had managed to kill a cultivator at the first-order Saint King Realm. So now that he had reached the third-order Saint, how could 3 first-order Saint Kings possibly be enough to capture him? Xueyu had far stronger subordinates she could have sent out. Hali Ka and Lin Mufeng were origin-returning realm masters, and the branch was not lacking second or third-order Saint Kings. As long as she issued an order, Hali Ka himself would have no choice but to set out. But she had only sent out 3 first-order Saint Kings. Was she using the lives of these 3 people to make a clean break with him, to show the depths of her thoughts and her determination? Such an act fit perfectly with her temperament, and knowing her intentions, Yang Kai grinned fiercely. This was also good. Shui Yu's approach had allowed the last trace of regret in his heart disappear. If they were to meet again in the future, Yang Kai believed that Shui Yu would definitely try to kill him, no longer displaying the same dangerous yet enchanting attitude he had come to know. However, Yang Kai had made up his mind to never get involved with this woman again and didn't plan on having any interaction with her in the future. Yang Kai sat in place and observed as his three pursuers swept the area around themselves with their divine senses, clearly not aware of his position yet. Only after they closed to within a certain distance did the three people's mood suddenly jump, as if they had just found a profound treasure, swiftly taking back their divine senses after discovering Yang Kai, and flew towards him. Seeing these three idiots standing not far away from him after setting up a triangular formation around him, each of their faces wearing an aggrieved and angry expression, Yang Kai knew they must have had been sent here by Shui Yu against their will. Since Shui Yu sent them here to die, they must have somehow offended or upset her. Yang Kai wasn't familiar with them and had never even seen them before, so there was no psychological burden on him when it came to killing them. Little brat, daring to covet Shui Yu, third young master's woman, you're not lacking courage, I'll give you that. Although that woman is useless except for being a bit more beautiful and greatly annoys this master, when all is said and done she's not someone who can ever be yours. Good. We brothers have been ordered to bring you back alive. Obediently surrender and we'll make you suffer less. If you disobey us, we'll break your hands and feet, then beat you half dead before dragging you back. The big man to his left shouted. Fuck. Father here has lived for so many years yet never had to experience flying so far through the starry sky on a flimsy star shuttle. This time I've suffered greatly due to that woman. Little brat, how do you plan on compensating me? A young-looking man to his right snapped at Yang Kai with an unpleasant look. His eyes filled with anger, apparently blaming Yang Kai for all of his suffering. Flying through the star shuttle on a starry sky was by no means a pleasant experience. Usually, cultivators would take starships from one cultivation star to another and only occasionally perform some scouting missions via star shuttle. But these missions would only last 3 or 5 days at most. But this time, they had chased Yang Kai down for a full 10 days, causing all 3 of these cultivators to feel extremely exhausted even after refining a great deal of St. Crystals. Naturally, they intended to make up for these losses by robbing Yang Kai. Heh. That woman only asked us to bring this brat back. She didn't say anything about the things on him. I heard that he tricked Holly Ka using that woman's name to get him, and Sir Lin Mufeng to open the branch's storeroom and take a lot of good things from it, including tens of thousands of high-rank St. Crystals. The last man said greedily. Really? The big man and the young man's eyes both fixed on the space ring on Yang Kai's fingers, their eyes burning with greed. Tens of thousands of St. Crystals was a massive amount of wealth, enough to tempt all 3 of these 3. That's right, I took 50,000 pieces of St. Crystals. Yang Kai chuckled, holding up the ring on his hand as he continued. They're all in this ring, and I also took a number of St. King grade herbs and ores. The value of those things isn't low either, probably at least 100,000 St. Crystals. Listening to Yang Kai, no matter which of the 3 men it was, they couldn't help feeling their breathing speed up a bit as greed and coveting filled their gazes. Little brat, hand over that ring and I promise not to hurt you. Of course that's only as long as cooperate with us. The big man extended his hand to Yang Kai with a big grin. You want this? Then first answer a question for me. Yang Kai smiled. If you have something to ask, just ask so we can hurry back. I don't want to remain here a moment longer than necessary, the big man said impatiently. It wasn't just inconvenient to travel the starry sky by star shuttle, it was dangerous. Not only would one need to consume their own strength constantly, if a sudden starry sky storm or fast-moving asteroid were to hit them, their lives might be in danger. If it wasn't under the threat of that woman, who would be willing to accept such a task? Even Holly Ka had been somewhat irritated by that annoying woman. Seeing Yang Kai intend to cooperate, the big man quickly urged him. How did you find me? It's not that I'm looking down on your 3, but the 3 of you don't seem to have such great skill that you'd be able to accurately follow me for so long. Yang Kai asked curiously. The 3 looked at each other and laughed. The big man didn't try to conceal it, waving his hand and taking out a colorful ribbon. When this ribbon appeared, as if it was pulled by some invisible force. It flew directly towards Yang Kai. Yang Kai's expression changed slightly as he reached out and grabbed the ribbon. On this ribbon, he could faintly smell Shui Yu's fragrance. "You were relying on this?" Yang Kai frowned. "What is it?" "If you ask father." "Who is father supposed to ask?" The big man grinned. "Before leaving, that woman handed it to me and said that by following its guidance we'd be able to find you. So we followed it all this way, and sure enough we've now caught you." Yang Kai stared at this man deeply and felt that he wasn't lying or trying to deceive him. Looking at the ribbon again, Yang Kai suddenly understood something and ground his teeth. That cheap slut! At this moment, he suddenly understood where the problem was. That woman's plans were worthy of admiration. A simple conversation before he left was enough for her to set up this scheme. The drink prepared by Shui Yu at that time was nothing but a distraction. There really wasn't any kind of drug in it, and was only meant to draw him into a false sense of security after he refused it. All along, her real intention was to bite his neck while she shed tears of anger and bitterness. When she bit him, she definitely left behind some kind of mark on him. Otherwise, how could she possibly determine his position with a mere ribbon? Having figured out what method these three had been relying on to track him, Yang Kai relaxed. As long as he knew how they were doing it, it wasn't a difficult problem to resolve. Yang Kai stowed the colorful ribbon into his space ring before turning an indifferent look towards the three men. Since Shui Yu had made her position and attitude clear, what he had to do now was provide an appropriate response. Seemingly having noticed the murderous intent in Yang Kai's eyes, with a loud shout, the big man on the left suddenly pushed his strength and did not hesitate to take action. The other two didn't do anything, simply crossing their arms in front of their chests as they prepared to watch the show, hoping to admire the miserable look on Yang Kai's face after he was captured. In their opinion, Yang Kai was just a third-order saint, so no matter which of them made a move, it would be easy for that one person to capture him. A mountain-like momentum exploded from the body of the big man on the left, submerging a large area of the starry sky in a strange pressure which seemed to squeeze Yang Kai from all directions, causing the latter's bones to let out a crackling sound as if they were being crushed and broken. The big man sneered as he flickered to appear behind Yang Kai. In the next instant, this man grew into a 100-meter-tall giant that lifted up one of its enormous feet, covered it in a brown energy halo, and stepped down towards Yang Kai. A soul-extinguishing pressure burst from the giant's eyes and flew straight towards Yang Kai's knowledge sea. When he noticed that his attacker was actually using a soul skill against him, Yang Kai couldn't help grinning and simply stood his ground calmly, waiting for the soul skill to reach him. If his opponent had used a physical attack, Yang Kai may have needed to spend some effort to deal with it, but since this big man had chosen to use a soul skill, Yang Kai had nothing to worry about. Yang Kai's soul strength was far greater than his cultivation, at least on the same level as a second-order Saint King's, and with the added effects of his conflagrated knowledge sea, even if he was facing the soul skill of a third-order Saint King, he wouldn't lose. This big man was only a first-order Saint King and was thinking he could easily bully Yang Kai, taking him in a single move, but how could he have known how strange Yang Kai's strength really was? Waves of spiritual energy soul overlapped to form a potent strike that the big man sent hurtling into Yang Kai's knowledge sea. But before this soul skill could play any role, it was met with a burning hot force and instantly incinerated. The smug expression the big man's face completely changed and his giant body shriveled back down to normal size as his pupils shrank to the size of a needle tip, his complexion paling greatly. The overwhelmingly powerful conflagrated spiritual energy inside Yang Kai's knowledge sea had caused him to suffer a big loss. His divine sense had been immediately damaged and pain so great he felt as if his head was splitting apart assailed him in the next instant. At the same time, the big man's pitiful screams rang out, a black spear of demonic flame appearing in Yang Kai's hand and was thrown out before anyone could react. Xiao! A whooshing sound resounded. Perceiving the approaching crisis, the big man forcefully circulated his strength and summoned out a Saint King grade mid-rank defensive artifact. This artifact was shaped like an umbrella and spanned slowly in front of the big man in order to deflect incoming attacks. The big man had relied on this umbrella artifact to save himself from a number of what would have been fatal injuries in the past. He believed that this time would be no exception, and as long as he could block this spear, he would be able to survive while his two companions who have not moved took action to assist him. The umbrella-like artifact, however, failed to live up to the big man's expectations, and before he could tell how, the demonic flame spear disappeared and strangely reappeared just 1 meter away from him. The spear had leapt across space, bypassing the big man's defenses entirely, appearing from the void right in front of the big man, causing him to let out a cry of horror as it easily penetrated his stone-like body. A burning hot yet simultaneously freezing cold strength spread out from the spear as the black demonic flames burned down his body, the contradictory waves of heat and chill making it impossible for the big man to mount any kind of defense. No matter how he pushed his own strength, he was unable to extinguish the demonic flames eating away at his body, instead only making things worse as the black flames seemed capable of burning everything it was fed, whether it was his clothing, his flesh and blood, or even his Saint Chi. All of it was just fuel to the demonic flames. The big man was soon completely engulfed and turned into a black fireball, his mournful screams echoing across the starry sky as he flew this way and that like a headless fly, quickly disappearing from sight. The other two men, who had been assuming relaxed postures, expecting to just spectate for fun, now wore extremely solemn expressions as a deep sense of shock, fear, and horror filled their hearts. Fighting and defeating opponents at a higher rank than one's own was not a foreign concept to them. As cultivators of a Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce branch, basically each of them had their own unique skills and abilities, allowing them to fight ordinary cultivators who stood a minor realm above their own. But what they had just witnessed was something entirely different. A boy killing an opponent with higher cultivation than his own in the blink of an eye was something neither of these two men had ever even imagined. Yet now this absurd situation had actually happened right in front of their eyes. The two men immediately realized how horrifying Yang Kai's combat strength was and understood that this time they had taken on an incredibly dangerous mission. Without any kind of discussion or eye contact, the two remaining men shot towards Yang Kai at the same time, not daring to hold back any of the strength, only wishing to defeat the strange boy as swiftly as possible. A big drum-like artifact was summoned out by one of them, and while he rushed towards Yang Kai, he beat this drum with the stick in his hand. Dong! A deep and resonant sound rang out, one that seemed capable of shaking the star field itself. And with this sound came a heavy murderous intent that flushed towards Yang Kai. Yang Kai opened his left hand and condensed a grand heavenly shield just before this invisible attack hit him. When the grand heavenly shield was struck by this potent strike, its surface sank inwards and nearly broke. The other attacking man summoned out a long sword and stabbed it forward, releasing a ray of light that along with the invisible attack from the big drum slammed towards Yang Kai. The grand heavenly shield broke after less than 3 breaths. Anyone who had reached the Saint King realm was no pushover. Each of them had experienced countless life or death battles and spent countless hours cultivating to obtain their current strength. Facing the joint attack from these two, Yang Kai didn't dare to act carelessly. Demonic flames burst from his body and soon a black dragon from behind Yang Kai's back. With a deafening dragon roar, this black dragon shook its head and swung his tail, its giant house-sized eyes locking onto the two attackers who flew towards Yang Kai. Yang Kai stepped onto the dragon's head, and as he spread out his vast spiritual energy towards the two men in front of him, he constantly pushed his Saint Chi to condense and display various 9 heavens divine skills along with his comprehension of the Tao of space. Profound heavenly sword, heaven-punishing spear, heaven-covering hand. Each strike Yang Kai sent out leapt across space, suddenly appearing and disappearing, quickly suppressing the two attackers. As his strength had grown, Yang Kai had come to realize an important truth. There was no strict division between martial skills. When one's cultivation and understanding of their own of strength reached a high enough level, even supposedly low-grade martial skills could display astonishing power. Artifacts were different. Low-grade artifacts were just low-grade artifacts. No matter how one used them, they could never become high-grade artifacts or be used in high-level battles. However, martial skills were simply an application of one's strength, and as long as one reached a high enough cultivation, they no longer needed to even use martial skills as they apply their own strength to respond appropriate during the course of a battle. Martial skills were developed to assist cultivators who had just stepped onto the martial Tao so they could begin to comprehend how to use their strength. So although after coming to the star field, the artifacts and herbs Yang Kai had brought from Tongxin realm were of little use. With the exception of supreme treasures like the soul-warming lotus and demon eye of annihilation, he could still use his martial skills freely. The black dragon's body exuded a terrifying aura, nearly causing the courage of the two Saint King realm cultivators to break as both of them used their full strength to attack yet failed to cause any harm to Yang Kai. As it overlooked them, the black dragon sent a mountain-like pressure towards the two attacks, greatly impeding their movements. The huge dragon's maw suddenly opened and engulfed one of the men, swallowing one of them into its form before biting into the other man's body. Although it failed to tear this man in two, the dark demonic flame spread directly to him, and no matter how this man tried to extinguish them, he failed and soon followed in the footsteps of the first big man. The screams of pain gradually diminished and eventually, silence reigned. The black dragon dissipated and the residual demonic flames were quickly taken back into Yang Kai's body. Amidst the vast starry sky, only two burnt corpses remained. Yang Kai stood in place for a while, but unlike normal, he was unable to absorb the remnant spiritual energy from these three. Helplessly shaking his head, Yang Kai knew that the souls of these people should have been completely extinguished by the demonic flame. Not thinking it was something worth regretting though, Yang Kai simply glanced in the direction of Rainfall Star before summoning his star shuttle once more and flying off. Back on Rainfall Star, in the main palace of the Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce branch, Xueyu, wearing a stunning red dress, closed her eyes and sat upon her chair, motionless. Holly Ka, Lin Mufeng, and the middle-aged woman all stood by, glancing around at each other from time to time, but none of them daring to speak. The atmosphere in the hall was stifling. They didn't know what had transpired for Xueyu to actually send 3 First-Order Saint Kings to chase after Yang Kai. Yang Kai had worked hard to awaken Xueyu for nearly a year, and Holly Ka and the other executives who had witnessed the entire incident really couldn't figure out how this pair of master and servant had turned into enemies. Could it be that this little brat had thoughtlessly taken advantage of this lady, then abandoned her? Holly Ka and the others couldn't help thinking. Old Zong, on the other hand, didn't pay any attention to this incident. The 3 branch executives felt incredibly awkward. Just as he was mulling over his suspicions again, Holly Ka's complexion suddenly changed and he took out a wooden token from his space ring, carefully stared at it for a moment, then cupped his fists and said, "Lady Xuer, He Ying's team of 3 have all died." Xueyu's beautiful eyes opened slowly, not showing any trace of surprise, her slightly furrowed brow relaxing, as if she had put down some kind of great worry, allowing her to exhale a long breath. After learning of the death of the 3 men sent out, Xueyu said nothing and instead just stood up and walked towards her room. "Lady Xuer." Holly Ka stepped forward and called out. Xueyu paused and looked back at him coldly. Holly Ka couldn't help feeling a sense of panic when those beautiful star-like eyes fixed on him, gulping to himself quietly. He couldn't understand why, but he felt as if it was Xueyu, 3rd young master, staring at him in that moment. Holly Ka, as the president of the Rainfall Star branch, had naturally met Xueyu, 3rd young master, and experienced his ruthless methods. It wasn't an exaggeration to say he was quite familiar with this look. It was clearly the one Xueyu, 3rd young master, wore when he was displeased. He couldn't understand why 2 completely different people who were even of different genders had the exact same eyes. But pushing down his fear, Holly Ka quickly said, "Lady Xuer, were He Ying and his team killed by little brother Yang?" "Yes." Xueyu nodded slightly. Holly Ka, Lin Mufeng, and the middle-aged woman all paled. How could that be? Little brother Yang is only a 3rd-order saint. Even if he is capable of fighting above his realm, dealing with one person should be his limit. How could he defeat 3 stronger opponents all at once? Lin Mufeng shook his head, repeated, seemingly unable to believe Xueyu's words. That was 3 Saint Kings, not 3 saints. Such a result was simply impossible. Then how do you think they died? Xueyu turned to look Lin Mufeng lightly, the latter immediately not knowing how to respond. Holly Ka instead, after watching the situation carefully, asked hesitantly, "Lady Xuer, why is it that after hearing that He Ying and his team died you seem happy?" "Do I?" Xueyu asked faintly. Holly Ka shook his head and didn't dwell on the issue. He Ying and his team dying were because their strength wasn't high enough, so there was nothing to complain about. After thinking about it for a moment, Holly Kai asked, Lady Shuer, that Yang Kai was your guard, but he has now killed 3 members of my branch. How should I process this matter? What else is there to do? He's not my guard anymore. And, if you see him later, capture him alive for me. I want him to taste the most exquisite torture this world has to offer. Shui Yu commanded, her voice seemingly filled with the coldest malice from the depths of purgatory. Finished with what she had to say, she waved her hand and slowly walked off. The 3 executives left in the hall all stared at each other in blank dismay. Lady Shuer seems to have put down something which was burdening her. The middle-aged woman spoke thoughtfully. I don't quite understand. How did those 2 go from being perfectly fine together a few days ago to bitter enemies in the blink of an eye? Holly Ka was confused. The matters of youth. And never mind, we shouldn't get involved. Since Lady Shuer has made her stance clear, we can only follow her will. It's a pity. That boy has such terrifying strength. If we had been able to understand that earlier, we might have been able to keep him here to cultivate. Holly Ka nodded a few times, also feeling it was a shame. A 3rd-order Saint Realm cultivator being able to kill 3 Saint Kings, such aptitude and strength was incredibly rare, even taking the entire star field into consideration. However, if they were to meet again in the future now, the 3 of them could only follow Lady Shuer's instructions to capture him alive. Amidst the endless expanse of the starry sky, the only light came from the distant twinkling stars. Yang Kai had been wandering through the star field now for 6 months. Since leaving Rainfall Star, he had been heading towards another cultivation star. The massive star chart above his knowledge sea provided him with many conveniences, and at minimum, he knew where his goal was and that he wouldn't get lost in the starry sky. For others, it was likely that after 6 months flying through the starry sky aboard a star shuttle they would be hopelessly lost. But Yang Kai, who had the massive star chart at his disposal, didn't need to worry about that. The distance between one cultivation star and another varied greatly. Some were close together and could be traveled between by star shuttle in less than a month or 2, while others were extremely remote and even by starship the journey could take years. Yang Kai's destination was relatively far away, and although he had been traveling for 6 months already, according to his estimations, it would still be another 3 months before he arrived. This was the sorrow of poverty. If one was unable to purchase a starship and a crew to operate it, they had no choice but to rely on star shuttles to traverse the starry sky, an act that consumed a massive amount of time. Fortunately, Yang Kai had found ways to not waste this time. The heavenly spirit ghost orchid was helping Yang Kai draw in the surrounding world energy at all times. But as there was very little world energy in the starry sky, so it couldn't play much of a role. Yang Kai had been depending on high-rank Saint Crystals during this time to restore himself and cultivate. While cultivating, Yang Kai busied himself by studying the alchemy books he had received from Old Zong, familiarizing himself with the medicinal effects and cultivation environments of various spirit grasses and spirit medicines. Yang Kai also studied Zong Ao's research material on spirit arrays and alchemy techniques. After committing this knowledge to memory, Yang Kai began to explore the Tao of space again. Fighting with those 3 Saint King Realm cultivators allowed him to discover more magical uses for the Tao of space. By attaching his insights into the Tao of space to his divine sense, Yang Kai was able to let threads of his spiritual energy leap across space and explore the situation at far greater distances than would ordinarily be possible. On top of that, these threads of divine sense were incredibly difficult to detect, and even if they were, tracing them back to Yang Kai's location was impossible. This was an application of the Tao of space Yang Kai had long ago comprehended. But now he had learned that the Tao of space could be used in conjunction with his Saint Chi to launch attacks. During his last battle, Yang Kai had relied on his comprehension of the Tao of space to allow his 9 heavens divine skills to break through space and strike at the enemy from places they could not have anticipated. This inadvertent discovery had allowed his combat power to soar. As a second-order saint, back on Water Moonstar, battling a first-order Saint King had left him quite exhausted, but now, killing 3 cultivators at the same realm had been quite easy. This was an advantage brought about by the flexibility of the Tao of space. Having gotten a taste of these benefits, Yang Kai was naturally determined to study this application in much greater detail. As he flew forward, Yang Kai contemplated and comprehended many of the mysteries of the Tao of space, allowing some previously obscure notions to become clear. Since entering the star field, he had encountered too many powerful masters, a number of whom had truly awe-inspiring strength, making Yang Kai realize just how vast the gap between himself and those people was. To survive in this place, great personal strength was essential. Fortunately, he had a number of advantages others couldn't hope to obtain. Conflagrated knowledge C, demon god golden blood, his massive stockpile of Saint Chi, his aptitude which had been tempered to the limit, all these advantages convinced him that as long as he was given enough time, he would be able to surpass any of this world's masters. On top of that, Yang Kai had traversed this path before and was experienced in what he had to do. Back on Tongshan realm, he had also risen from obscurity to fame, from being alone to commanding millions, so he was no stranger to this life. Now he simply had to continue forging ahead. It would take longer this time for sure, but that wasn't a problem. As the star shuttle flew forward, Yang Kai didn't waste a moment of time. At one point, Yang Kai suddenly opened his eyes and frowned, glancing sideways with some surprise. More than a dozen azure lights were quickly approaching from afar, each one of them clearly a star shuttle. They moved swiftly in a type of pack, their leader apparently a member of the monster race with two short horns on his head. Yang Kai couldn't identify which lineage this man belonged to, but from his short-cut hair and ruddy face, it was apparent he was quite a rough character. This monster race man was surrounded by cultivators from various races, each of whom was exuding the energy fluctuations corresponding to the Saint King realm, holding artifacts of different shapes, their eyes cold and sharp. Yang Kai had been immersed in his own meditation, and by the time he had noticed these newcomers, it was too late for him to avoid them. He hadn't expected to encounter a group of cultivators also flying through the star field by star shuttle. The dozen or so azure lights approached quickly and arrived in front of Yang Kai a short while later, each of their riders directing curious looks towards him. After discovering that Yang Kai was just a third-order saint though, many of these people's gazes became dismissive, some of them even openly laughing at him. The leading monster race man seemed to have been born with a pair of narrow snake eyes, and was holding a silver spear decorated by blue patterns that gave off a rich water attribute aura. His gloomy eyes swept Yang Kai as he used his own divine sense to probe this unfamiliar youth, seemingly wanting to investigate all of Yang Kai's details. Yang Kai's face remained unchanged, still sitting quietly atop his star shuttle. "Boy, did you see anyone else pass by here?" the monster race man asked in a booming voice that rang in Yang Kai's ears. Yang Kai shook his head. "Did you really not see anyone?" The monster race man didn't seem to believe Yang Kai and directed a doubtful look towards him. "That group of people clearly came this way. We've been tracking them the whole time. So how could you not have encountered them? What kind of benefits did they provide to you in exchange for not revealing their whereabouts?" He obviously felt that Yang Kai was lying to him. Yang Kai, however, just shrugged. "You're really the only living people I've encountered for the past few months. No one came here before you." Yang Kai spoke in a calm and genial tone, not wanting to stir up trouble in this place. All he wanted to do was reach his destination a bit sooner and settle down on that cultivation star. Always drifting through the starry sky was not a pleasant experience, and the heavenly spirit ghost orchid's medicinal effects were nearly exhausted. "DG, the courage of this little boy isn't small," a woman next to the leading man commented. A third-order saint facing so many saint kings yet still being able to remain indifferent was either crazy, bold, or had something he could rely on to get him out of this situation. The woman, though, the second possibility was the most likely. The monster race man named DG nodded. "What's this brat smiling about? He doesn't look trustworthy. He definitely saw that group of people and is deliberately not telling us." Another person interjected, glaring maliciously towards Yang Kai, seemingly wanting to rush forward and attack him. DG just stared at Yang Kai coldly, his eyes flashing slightly, not expressing an opinion either way. Why bother trying to talk with him? After we kill him and search his soul, everything will become clear, won't it? Another person called out, looking rather impatient as he shouted, "Brat, if you don't cooperate, don't blame us for being heavy-handed." Yongkai glanced over at this man and smiled lowly, and wisp of cold light flashing across the depths of his eyes. Forget it. We don't have time to waste stirring up trouble. He doesn't seem to be lying anyways. The monster race man named DG shook his head and suddenly said. It wasn't apparent what he was thinking, but it seemed he didn't have any intention to act openly against Yongkai, simply calling out in the next moment, "Kid, our group has been out here for quite some time, but we still haven't been able to track down our targets. We've consumed a lot of Saint Crystals and now don't have much left. Give us some of yours as well as some restorative pills and we won't embarrass you further." Yongkai frowned slightly. He had thought this group would act against him, yet now things had taken a sudden turn for the better. Nodding lightly, Yongkai replied plainly, "Fine." Saying so, the space ring on Yongkai's finger flashed and he openly sent out 1,000 or so high-rank Saint Crystals towards this group. When these people saw these Saint Crystals fly over towards them, their eyes all went red with greed and they quickly began snatching them, big grins appearing on their faces as they worked. They had truly been wandering through the star field for quite some time and were low on supplies. Otherwise, with their strength, it would have been impossible for them to become this happy after only receiving this amount of Saint Crystals. Yongkai suddenly couldn't help remembering the two sisters He Zhao and He Miao of Sword Union. Back in the chaotic abyss, the two sisters had also had to find an asteroid to hide inside to avoid the power of the starry sky, and if Yongkai hadn't sent them some supplies, they would have died long ago. When one spent extended periods of time in the starry sky, having enough Saint Crystals and restorative pills was essential to survival. Seeing Yongkai scatter 1,000 high-rank Saint Crystals without blinking, DG couldn't help showing some surprise, not having expected this youth to be so rich. Being able to toss out 1,000 high-rank Saint Crystals meant for certain there were more Saint Crystals in his space ring, and for a time, DG became excited. Not only him, the cultivators who had caught Yongkai's Saint Crystals also now had greed looks on their faces as they stared at the ring on Yongkai's hand, wishing they could rush out and snatch it. Several people from this group had quietly shifted their positions and secretly condensed their strength, only waiting for DG to give the order to take Yongkai's life. The woman who had spoken earlier also turned to look at DG, her eyes flashing a subtle light, silently inquiring about his opinion. A look of struggle appeared on DG's face for a moment before he suddenly grinned and nodded to Yongkai. "Seems you understand your own weight, kid. This time we'll let you off. Let's go." And with that said, the group reluctantly followed behind DG, many of them wondering why they had let go of such a fat sheep. To them, Yongkai was just a weak kid with more Saint Crystals than were good for him. But since DG had spoken, none of them dared to refute him and simply let out a series of sighs. The group soared off, and only after they had left Yongkai far behind did the woman ask, "DG, this isn't your style. What are you so concerned about?" DG snorted and turned his head back to see that everyone in his team was looking at him, silently asking for an explanation, causing him to shout angrily, "I've seen people acting tough, but that brat wasn't simply putting up a front. Didn't any of you notice that he was completely unafraid of us? He was just a third-order saint, so why wasn't he even the slightest bit anxious when he was facing us? He's out here, all alone in the vast star field. If we were to kill him, no one would know, so why didn't he look the least bit worried?" Many people wore pensive looks and one of them soon muttered, "Does he have an elder protecting him in secret nearby? Fuck, you stupid pig. You should just die early, so you can quickly be reincarnated." DG shouted furiously, "I really wonder how you managed to survive until now." The scolded man turned red but didn't dare to retort, only whispering under his breath in a tone so small no one could hear him. The woman thoughtfully spoke up next. "Do you mean to say that boy had enough confidence that even if we attacked him it wouldn't matter?" DG nodded. "It should be like that. How can that be? He's just a third-order saint. With so many of us, could it be he was confident he could kill us?" The woman shouted in disbelief. "He wouldn't be able to kill us, but we may not be able to kill him either. There must be a powerful master behind that kid, and he's probably carrying a number of powerful artifacts. If we tried to act against him, he would be able to escape by taking advantage of those artifacts, and in the end, will have gained nothing and instead created a life or death enmity. Once his elders or sect find out and come to seek revenge, how are we supposed to resist? After listening to DG's words, the woman and the others frowned deeply, and the more they thought about it, the more what DG said made sense to them. If he didn't have something to rely on, how could a third-order Saint Realm kid face so many cultivators above his realm and remain completely indifferent? Then why did you demand he hand over those Saint crystals? After the woman understood what had just happened, she couldn't help feeling a cold sweat drip down her back. Isn't that also setting up a grudge between us? It's nothing so serious. DG waved his hand. A few Saint crystals isn't something worth holding a grudge over. Since he has a powerful backer to depend on, naturally he won't care about such a small amount of wealth. On top of that, it seemed like he knew I was trying to find a way to take a step back. Otherwise, once our group made such a big scene yet flew off without gaining the least bit of advantage, where would our face be? Didn't you see him so easily toss out those Saint crystals? That kid is definitely a worldly person who knows how to settle matters. Shit, are all brats so difficult to handle nowadays? Is there any space left for us in this world? The woman pursed her lips and laughed, playing with the Saint crystals in her hand. After noticing that all of these Saint crystals were high rank, she immediately knew what DG was talking about. A mere third-order Saint youth possessing such wealth could only mean it had been gifted to him by his elders. Forget about that kid. The people we're looking for must be hiding around here. Let's split up, you take your team that way and I'll head this way. Whoever discovers them will send out a signal and we'll all converge on their location. The sooner we finish this up, the sooner we can go back. Damn it. After drifting around for a half a year, I really don't want to stay here any longer. Yeah. The woman nodded, taking half of the group with her and soaring off in a different direction from DG. Atop his star shuttle, Xianxia remained unperturbed. This kind of minor disturbance made no impact on him. As Xianxia's understanding of the Tao of space improved, so did his ability to escape. Currently, as long as he didn't meet with a master in the origin-returning realm, he had nothing to fear as he could just tear space and flee. No one would dare chase him into the void. If he could spend 1,000 Saint crystals to save himself some trouble, though, he would happily do so. As time passed, Xianxia continued to move closer to his goal. One day, Xianxia arrived at an asteroid sea, and at a glance he could see countless asteroids spread out across a vast area, some as large as mountains while others were as small as plates. In the starry sky there were many asteroid seas like this one which could blot out the sky, some of them large enough that it would take months to traverse via star shuttle. Generally speaking, these asteroid seas didn't simply drift about freely, not following any kind of set course. When starships sailed the starry sky, they would take care to avoid regions where there were large asteroid seas, as they could not only affect the speed of navigation, but also posed a danger to the starship itself. If a starship was to be hit in a bad spot, there was even a risk that it could be sunk. Excellent chart masters would draw up star charts to avoid such regions in order to allow starships to reach their destinations safely. Arriving here, Xianxia couldn't let the star shuttle fly forward on its own because one bad hit from an erratic asteroid could destroy it. So he had no choice but to temporarily put down other matters and concentrate on flying. Traveling through the dense asteroids, after about 10 days, Xianxia reached a central position in the asteroid sea, ahead of which he could still see endless asteroids though. Xianxia wasn't anxious though, he wasn't in a hurry to get where he was going. Amidst the dark asteroid sea, a bloom of light suddenly appeared in front of Xianxia, causing him to frown and quickly release his divine sense to investigate. A number of strong and weak life auras came from a position ahead of him, and Xianxia could detect energy fluctuations that could only be associated with battle. Were there other people in this place? Xianxia felt the situation was a little strange, but looking at the scene in front of him, it was clear that some kind of conflict had broken out. Suddenly, Xianxia thought about the group he had met a few days ago. This probably wasn't a coincidence. Xianxia had been wandering the starry sky for half a year now and had not met a single other person besides them, so it was more than likely it was the same group. When they last met, Xianxia was able to understand from their words that they were pursuing some kind of enemy, and judging from the current situation, that group seemed to have caught up with their target. Xianxia quietly flew over, concealing his aura, landing atop a rather large asteroid a moment later, using it to hide himself as he took a closer look, soon discovering that his conjecture was correct. On one side of the battle was the group of cultivators led by DG. They had nearly 20 people, but at this moment less than half that number remained. From the nearby asteroids that were filled with bloodstains and broken limbs, it was obvious the other half of their group had suffered a disaster. The group that was fighting DG and his allies wasn't much better off. Everyone was going all out, panting for breath as they swung their artifacts and sent out various different attacks, many people cursing loudly as they fought. Both sides were in a tragic state with the number of injuries and deaths constantly climbing. Xianxia hid well enough that no one was able to find him, then began absorbing the soul remnants of the fallen cultivators into his knowledge sea. Everyone here was a master at the Saint King realm, so each of their remnant souls was very helpful to Xianxia. These people's perceptions and insights into the martial Tao and heavenly way would enhance Xianxia's own comprehensions, giving him a joyful feeling as he quietly moved closer towards the center of the battlefield, hoping to draw in more of these remnant souls. DG's group wasn't anything good. It was obvious from their previous attitude towards Xianxia that if not for DG having some scruples, they would have openly attacked. So even if these people died, Xianxia wouldn't care. On the other hand, the people fighting against DG's group were complete strangers to Xianxia, so he naturally wasn't about to step forward to help them. Xianxia didn't mind sitting on a mountaintop, watching the tigers fight while waiting to reap the fisherman's benefits. Xianxia didn't know how long this battle had been going on for, but from the extent of their consumption, he figured it had been at least a day or two, with their battlefield continuously shifting and drifting through the asteroid sea. Xianxia stealthily moved along with them, secretly praying that the remaining cultivators would quickly die. As time passed, fewer and fewer people could hold on to their lives. Both sides now only had a handful of people left. Even powerful Third-Order Saint Kings couldn't resist the call of death. However, Xianxia was keenly aware that even after they saw their comrades die, none of these people showed any regret, all of them shuttling through the asteroid sea as they found, inspecting the asteroids one by one, seemingly searching for something. The deaths of so many of their comrades and their excessive consumption had gradually cooled the two parties' heads, restoring their ability to reason. Now, both sides no longer completely disregarded their safety and were fighting in a cautious and reserved manner. Seeing this development, after having spectated for so long, Xianxia couldn't help feeling a bit disappointed. If no one else died, he couldn't reap any benefits, so staying here any longer would just be a waste of time. As such, he quietly left the asteroid he was hiding behind and prepared to continue on his way while processing the soul remnants of the dozen or so Saint King realm cultivators he had previously absorbed. Both groups of cultivators were far too busy dealing with their remaining opponents, so no one noticed him. After the time it would take to make a cup of tea, Xianxia was already a few hundred kilometers away from the battlefield and was preparing to summon out his star shuttle when a subtle yet mysterious energy fluctuation behind him suddenly caught his attention. Xianxia quickly turned around just in time to see a bright light flash amidst the field of asteroids, one that faded and disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. Xianxia stopped as a look of astonishment appeared on his face. The energy fluctuation just now gave him a very familiar feeling. It was clearly a fluctuation due to the manipulation of space. In other words, it is very likely that someone had torn space at the point where he had spotted the flash of light. This discovery immediately drew Xianxia's attention. It had been a few years now since he came to the star field, and he had learned that out of the nearly infinite number of cultivators out there, those proficient in the Tao of space were incredibly few. The Tao of space itself was an esoteric field of study, one that was difficult to become introduced to, and even more difficult to master. As for reaching the pinnacle of comprehension, that was nay impossible. Having inadvertently stumbled upon such a location related to the Tao of space, Xianxia was inclined to explore it to see who the person who tore space was and whether or not he could hold a dialogue with them, preferably gaining an opportunity to learn from one another. Releasing his divine sense, Xianxia soon swept the area in front of himself all the way up to the previous battlefield. Yet to his surprise, he found no human figures in the place from a moment ago, only a faint distortion in space. What happened? Xianxia couldn't repress his curiosity and decided to rush back and investigate more thoroughly. After a short while, Xianxia once again arrived at the previous battlefield and looked around. There was indeed no one here, the several cultivators who had been fighting up until a moment ago all seemingly having disappeared, with no bodies or corpses nearby. Xianxia followed the distortion in space to a mountain-sized asteroid upon which a gate-like structure had been built. This gate was extremely simple, and at first glance was obviously quite old. Also of note was the fact that this gate was covered in a thick layer of space spirit crystals. At the base of the gate, there were 2 grooves where Saint crystals could be placed. Looking down, Xianxia noticed 2 high-rank Saint crystals which had been thoroughly exhausted of energy. A space array? Xianxia's eyes widened as he exclaimed. He hadn't expected this kind of development. The slight distortion in space had clearly not been created by someone tearing space, but had instead propagated as a result of this space array being activated. The 2 drained Saint crystals were a clear sign that the space array had been turned on. But why was there a space array in this place? Did this mean that what the 2 sides who had been fighting before were constantly looking for was this space array? Where did this space array lead to? The 2 groups having gone missing must be because they entered the space array and were teleported away. Xianxia stood in front of the space array, his expression changing frequently as he weighed his options. After a while, Xianxia pulled out the 2 spent Saint crystals from the space array's base and replaced them with fresh ones, the chi stored inside them quickly pouring into the array and starting it up. A bright light suddenly appeared and rippled appeared at the center of the gate, after which an illusory image gradually began to form. Xianxia sent divine sense threads into the gate and using his own Tao of space comprehension sent them out 10,000 kilometers in every direction. He didn't see anyone, only a strange and wild piece of land with lush vegetation and bright sunlight. At a glance, Xianxia could tell this place was a vibrant mainland. Xianxia withdrew his divine sense threads and without hesitation stepped into the space array. In the blink of an eye, Xianxia appeared in the strange world he had never seen before. The world energy aura around him was rich to a shocking degree. Xianxia even estimated that it was denser than the average aura on Rainfall Star. Although it couldn't be compared to the floating continent, it was definitely much better than other cultivation stars. The heavenly spirit ghost orchid on his chest finally began playing its proper role, its gloomy face actively drawing massive amounts of the ambient world energy into Xianxia's body. Xianxia couldn't help revealing a look of happiness. He even considered entering secluded retreat here until the heavenly spirit ghost orchid's medicinal effects ran out. The heavenly spirit ghost orchid was too rare. Halika would not have given this precious treasure to Xianxia if it weren't out of consideration for Shuiyu's face, and although its effect would gradually disappear over 2 or 3 years, only half that amount of time had passed so far. Xianxia really didn't want to waste this opportunity. Thinking about it for a moment though, Xianxia suddenly cursed in frustration. While flying through the starry sky, Xianxia could perfectly hide, but in this strange continent, it was a different story. Even if he could conceal his own aura, the heavenly spirit ghost orchid's constant inhalation of world energy would easily be noticed. Sure enough, no sooner had these worries occurred to him did the cultivators who had arrived here first fly over to investigate. There weren't many of them left, only 3 or 4 from each side. They seemed to be quite wary of others entering this place. It didn't take long for all of these cultivators to assemble. The 2 groups who had been locking in a life-or-death struggle now all staring curiously at Xianxia, everyone wondering which side he belonged to. The monster race man named DG wore a stunned look and let out a chuckle a moment later. "Kid, how did you arrive here?" The woman who had been following beside DG also stared at Xianxia strangely, her eyes filled with a look of vigilance, apparently thinking Xianxia had been tailing them. "Don't misunderstand. I don't know them. I just happened to meet them once while traveling across the starry sky." Xianxia ignored the DG and explained himself to the other group of people who were eyeing him dangerously. The head of the other group was also a man who appeared to be in his late 40s. This man was a 3rd Order Saint King, possessing similar strength to DG. This middle-aged man stepped out from his team and loudly interrogated, "How did you find this place?" Xianxia shrugged and responded plainly, "I was passing by when I saw some flashes of light amidst the asteroid sea. I followed those lights to investigate, but I never expected to find a space array, and out of curiosity, I decided to activate it and see what was on the other side. If your groups have business in this place, you should go about it with a free hand. No need to pay any attention to me. Now that I've had a look, I'll leave." While he spoke, Xianxia was secretly on guard. Although the number of cultivators left in these two groups had shrunk greatly, both sides still had third-order Saint Kings and were paying close attention to him. One wrong word would land him in a dangerous situation. He had to adopt a submissive stance here. Xianxia was trying to find a way to have these two groups continue their previous fight, hopefully resulting in their mutual annihilation. As long as all of these people died, he would then be free to explore this strange continent and see if there was anything good to pick. The middle-aged man stared at Xianxia deeply, as if he wanted to look into the depths of his soul, only nodding after a long time, his eyes suddenly flashing as he wore a kind smile. "I believe you. Many thanks." Xianxia nodded. "Kid, since you've found your way into this place, you don't need to be in such a rush to leave." DG laughed. "Before, in the starry sky, Father here didn't want to stir up any unnecessary trouble, so I didn't bother acting against you there. But here, I'd like to see where you can flee." Saying so, he turned and yelled at the middle-aged man. "Guiche, you and I have consumed the vast majority of our restorative pills and St. Crystals, but this brat is a fat sheep. The last time we met, he gave us 1,000 pieces of high-rank St. Crystal without even blinking an eye. I'm certain there are more St. Crystals in his space ring. How about we split them 50-50? That's a good proposal." The middle-aged man named Guiche nodded slightly, looking at Xianxia with a chuckle. Xianxia also stared back at him with a smile, the look on his face indifferent. DG laughed. "Guiche, although I despise you, I do admire your easygoing personality. Since it's settled, do you want to do it, or should I? Either that, or we could both do it to avoid there being anything suspicions between us after the fact." Guiche slowly shook his head. "I won't." DG gawked for a moment, but before he could understand what Guiche was playing at, the middle-aged man turned to Xianxia and said, "Little brother, would you like to join us?" "Join you?" Xianxia frowned. "Join you to do what?" "To explore this place, of course. No one has been here for a very long time, and there are no doubt many good things waiting for us to find. As long as you follow us, you'll be able to obtain some benefits. How about it?" Guiche asked in a seemingly sincere manner. After hearing what he said, everyone looked stunned, not able to understand why Guiche would invite a measly third-order Saint Realm brat to join them. Not just those on DG's side, but even Guiche's allies were equally suspicious. Only DG, who seemed like a brute but actually had quite a sharp wit, was able to instantly understand Guiche's intentions, cackling as he openly said, "Guiche, aren't you being too shameless? If you want to let this kid explore the way for you when you come across some kind of danger, just come right out and say it. Don't use some petty trickery to win him over. Kid, don't listen to his nonsense. I can guarantee that if you agree to his proposal, not only will you not obtain any benefits, you'll definitely die without a complete corpse." When DG exposed the truth, everyone understood what was going on. Guiche didn't show the slightest bit of embarrassment, however, and instead wore an even more sincere expression as he nodded and said, "Indeed, I had such ideas, but little brother, with your low strength, how could you obtain benefits without paying a little price? If you follow me, you'll still have a chance to survive. I won't make you go into places that are clearly too dangerous. On the other hand, if you follow DG, I guarantee you won't live to see tomorrow. Can I act alone? Just pretend you never even saw me." Xianxia said with a distressed look. Everyone let out a burst of mocking laughter. "Good. It looks like if I don't choose a side, I'll die right here and now, right?" DG and Guiche did not speak. The former snickering menacingly with his intentions obvious. Xianxia's eyes moved between Guiche and DG for a time before he eventually pointed towards Guiche. "I'll go with you." Guiche nodded in satisfaction. DG wore an indifferent expression on his face. Although failing to obtain a pawn to help explore the way was regretful, Xianxia's strength was so low that he didn't really care either way. A mere third-order saint would undoubtedly die as soon as their groups encountered any real danger, so he wasn't of much use in the first place. The only real regret DG felt was that the Saint crystals in Yang Kai's space ring did not land in his hands. But with the richness of the world energy aura in this place, it didn't really matter if he could obtain those Saint crystals or not. Letting out a snort, DG shot Yang Kai a malicious glare. "Brat, your death will be very ugly. Don't blame father here for not reminding you. Following you will only make me die faster." Yang Kai replied bluntly. Of the people here, Yang Kai didn't fear anyone. Even if he couldn't beat them in a fight, couldn't he just escape? The Third Order Saint King Guiche's desire to capture him was nothing more than a fool's dream, which was why Yang Kai so easily compromised to explore the mysteries hidden here. Since these two groups had been searching for this place all along, they clearly had a better idea of its layout and what treasures were hidden inside. "Don't worry. When this is all over, I'll collect your corpse for you." DG taunted Yang Kai before waving his hand and shouting, "Let's go!" Saying so, he led his group and flew off in a certain direction. After losing so many of their allies already, it was obvious DG had no intention to continue fighting with Guiche. "We should also go," Guiche said with a smile, not making any attempt to stop DG, turning in a different direction and flying off with his 3 remaining followers and Yang Kai bringing up the rear. No words were exchanged along the way as Guiche and his group didn't seem to be in the mood for conversation. The previous battle had caused their group countless deaths and injuries, and all of them were currently immersed in the sorrow of losing their friends and relatives. So they had no interest in making trouble a weak outsider like Yang Kai. Yang Kai was also happy with the current situation and simply followed behind the group silently while observing his surroundings. Among the people he was traveling with in addition to Guiche being Third Order Saint King, a man with scars on his face was also a Third Order Saint King. Guiche called him Ganji. There was also a young woman with a pair of peach eyes and enchanting eyes, as well as a slender youth who looked around the same age as Yang Kai. Both of these cultivators were Second Order Saint Kings, but Yang Kai had yet to learn their names. Against such a lineup, Yang Kai had absolutely no chance of defeating them face to face. But if he wanted to leave, Yang Kai was completely confident they wouldn't be able to block him. Observing carefully, Yang Kai recognized the young man who was as thin as a bamboo pole as the one who had been searching around the asteroids before. The space array should have been found by him. Along the way, the young man would take out a piece of old-looking animal skin with a number of strange symbols and patterns drawn on it from time to time. Under the leadership of this youth, the group swiftly moved forward. This world was rich in world energy, so naturally the material wealth was also quite astonishing. Spirit herbs and spirit grasses with medicinal ages in the hundreds and even thousands of years were everywhere. Yang Kai was delighted by this sight and spared no effort to collect these treasures. Guiche didn't stop him and even helped to collect these herbs along with his teammates, stuffing various grasses, fruits, and flowers into his space ring. Yang Kai gave them a few pointers, telling them how to harvest these herbs in order to maintain their complete medicinal efficacies, immediately earning him the attention of the 4 Saint Kings. "Are you alchemist?" the young woman couldn't help asking. "Yes," Yang Kai easily admitted. Alchemists were few in number and rarely seen out in public. In general, alchemists focused on exploring the alchemic way, and their cultivation realm was only a secondary concern, causing their combat effectiveness to be quite low. Hearing Yang Kai's words, the 4 people's vigilance towards him obviously relaxed a lot. "What grade of pills can you refine?" the young woman asked curiously. "Saint grade high-rank pills." "Not bad," Guiche interjected with a smile. "A Third Order Saint able to refine Saint grade high-rank pills. It looks like you'll be able to refine Saint King grade pills within a few years. Such an alchemist would actively get snatched up by many forces. You best work hard, kid." Yang Kai smiled and nodded. "Can you explain something to me? Why is your body constantly absorbing world energy? It's quite noticeable. What pill did you eat?" The cultivator called Ganji looked at Yang Kai suspiciously. Not only him, but the others in the group had also taken notice of this anomaly. Yang Kai's was clearly not circulating his secret art to cultivate, but the world energy around him was still continuing to flow into his body, improving his cultivation. This not only aroused their curiosity but also their greed. Naturally, they wanted to learn more. "It's not the effect of a pill, it's because of this Yang Kai took the initiative to open his shirt and reveal his chest. The 4 pairs of eyes stared towards him and saw the gloomy baby face open its mouth and swallow a lot of world energy. What is this? The young woman reached out and touched it but was unable to discover anything about it. Heavenly Spirit Ghost Orchid? Guiche's face changed slightly as he muttered to himself, apparently seeing through the identity of this item at a glance. Heavenly Spirit Ghost Orchid? The other 3 called out in alarm, the slender youth's eyes flashing with greed as his face filled with excitement. That rare treasure that helps one cultivate? Did you really take a Heavenly Spirit Ghost Orchid? Yang Kai nodded calmly. Where did you get this thing? Guiche hurriedly asked. Do you have any others? The Heavenly Spirit Ghost Orchid was such a rare and precious treasure that even Guiche couldn't suppress his desire to possess it. With this thing, he could save himself several years of cultivation time, allowing him to achieve twice the results with half the effort. No, this was a gift from a senior, Yang Kai said as he organized his clothes again. He wasn't afraid to expose the existence of the Heavenly Spirit Ghost Orchid because once this kind of treasure was refined by someone, it could not be snatched by another. Sure enough, upon hearing Yang Kai's answer, all 4 of the others showed a pained expression, as if he was wasting the heaven's precious gifts. A 3rd order saint actually using such an exotic treasure to assist his cultivation, moreover not entering secluded retreat but instead flying across the starry sky, it was simply the definition of waste. No matter which one of them it was, they were certain that if they were able to obtain a Heavenly Spirit Ghost Orchid, they would find a place with rich world energy and seclude themselves until its medicinal effects were depleted. For a time, the eyes of the 4 people stared at Yang Kai with clear resentment. Guiche even trembled in anger, seemingly wanting to kill Yang Kai to vent his frustration. There are so many rare herbs here. Perhaps 1 or 2 Heavenly Spirit Ghost Orchids can be found, Yang Kai said casually. The young woman just glared at him. The environment required to breed Heavenly Spirit Ghost Orchids is extremely specific. How could it be so easy to find one? I'm afraid there is no such treasure in this place. Enough nonsense, kid. Lead the way. If there is any danger that you can't handle, speak up quickly. Ganji was obviously dissatisfied with Yang Kai's wasteful use of the Heavenly Spirit Ghost Orchid and was venting his anger by yelling. Yang Kai nodded indifferently. This place was a little different from the floating continent. Although both places had extremely rich world energy and material wealth, there were clearly traces of the existence of monster beasts here, and these monster beasts were all high-order monster beasts. Occasionally, some 7th or 8th order beasts would appear and 6th order beasts were a common sight. Guiche and the others clearly didn't know much about this place, and although they possessed the animal skin that served as a guide, the drawings on it were quite vague. Yang Kai explored the road ahead but did not encounter much danger. He could easily kill 6th order monster beasts, but once he discovered any trace of 7th order or 8th order monster beasts, he would immediately turn back and inform Guiche and his people about the situation. Such cowardly behavior caused the group of 4 to hold a very disdainful view of him, each of them feeling like this little brat was fearful and incompetent. Yang Kai, of course, was consciously hiding his true strength, only displaying the capabilities of an ordinary 3rd order saint while helping to fight these monster beasts. Guiche and his team observed Yang Kai for many days, but found nothing suspicious and gradually relaxed their vigilance. A mere 3rd order saint was no cause for concern to them. Guiche had openly declared he would make Yang Kai explore the way when he invited him to travel with them. But he had clearly overestimated how dangerous the place was, and until now the only threat came from the various monster beasts. Time passed and Yang Kai gained a great deal. In addition to the herbs he collected, the various monster beast parts such as their claws, fur, and cores also landed in his hands. Guiche wasn't stingy, and after each monster beast was killed, he would distribute its valuable parts according to everyone's contributions. Of course, Yang Kai was given the least. Yang Kai had no complaints though. He gradually got acquainted with this group of people, and although he knew they were harboring ill intentions towards him, no one had made a move as of yet. This group also didn't seem to come from a single force. Although everyone treated Guiche as their leader, It was obvious that Guiche and Ganji were from different backgrounds, while the young woman and the slender youth seemed to have come from the same force, as they often supported and helped each other in battle. Yang Kai didn't understand why such a disparate group of people would come together to explore this place. Yang Kai didn't ask any question, though, to avoid drawing unwanted attention to himself. After another battle that was slightly more challenging, Guiche distributed the loot. The 8th Order Monster Beast's core was thrown to Ganji, while the Monster Beast's blood was collected into several jars and distributed amongst the group, while its teeth, claws, and fur were all pocketed by Guiche. Yang Kai stuffed a jar of blood indifferently into his space ring. Monster Beast blood was also very useful. It could be used for alchemy or in laying out spirit arrays, and was even sometimes used for artifact refining. After the battle, it was natural to take a break. The group of 4 had taken many saint crystals from Yang Kai without a hint of politeness, each of them obtaining 200 or 300 pieces. Now, taking out these saint crystals, they began to restore themselves. Yang Kai was able to restore himself the quickest, and it wasn't long before he was back at his peak. After an hour, the young woman also opened her eyes, put the unused saint crystals back into her space ring, then walked over to a small lake nearby to wash her face in the water. Yang Kai glanced around and found that the other 3 were still meditating. So he walked over to the lake as well, crouched down beside the young woman, and took a sip of the clear water. Although Yang Kai was still young, he could still be considered a veteran flower purveyor. From a woman's demeanor and words, he could infer what that woman's personality was, whether her nature was charming, seductive, cold, elegant, passionate. When he first saw this young woman, he had thought she belonged to the seductive category. Generally, a woman with such beguiling eyes was one who wasn't willing to remain lonely and often engaged in promiscuous behavior. So at the beginning, he hadn't dared to approach this woman to avoid any kind of unwanted entanglement. However, after slowly becoming familiar with her, Yang Kai discovered that this woman named Luo Yao had a very different personality than he originally thought. She was quite unlike Purple Stars by Ye and had a noble air beneath her flirtatious appearance, while her personality was calm and solemn. This contradictory combination of appearance and demeanor created an unusually powerful appeal, and Yang Kai had repeatedly found the slender man often staring at Luo Yao's gently swaying bottom and willow-like waist, often forgetting to even blink. Even Guiche, when distributing the spoils from victories, would deliberately allocate more to her. Ganji, a man who gave off the impression of a stalwart warrior, also paid a lot of attention to Luo Yao during each battle to protect her safety. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Luo Yao had it easiest amongst this group of people. Little brother, do you have something to ask? If you do, just speak up. Luo Yao has cleaned her face before turning a slightly meaningful smile to Yang Kai, obviously having seen through his intentions in approaching her. I just want to know, what are you guys looking for here? How did you find that space array? Yang Kai made a clean break when he saw her see through his act. The place where the 2 spoke was not too far from the other 3, and if Guiche and the others wanted to hide this information, they would naturally be able to step in. But when Yang Kai asked this question, all 3 of these men maintained a state of meditation, which meant they didn't care whether their purpose was exposed or not, emboldening Yang Kai significantly. Hiding his strength and feigning weakness all this time had finally paid off, allowing this group of people to lower their guard towards Yang Kai. We're looking for a place to temper our bodies. Luo Yao replied succinctly, a faint glow appearing in the depths of her beautiful eyes. As long as we can find that place, we can improve the strength of our physical bodies. Although you're an alchemist, you are also a cultivator. You should know the benefits of having greater physical strength, yes. Yang Kai nodded. Of course he knew the advantages of having an intrepid physique, far more so than these 4 at least. Without his unusually strong physique, Yang Kai would not have been able to store and utilize so much Saint Qi, nor would he be able to fight opponents above his realm so easily. A solid body was the foundation of a cultivator, no matter how profound a cultivator's secret art or martial skills were, or how potent their Saint Qi was. If their physical body couldn't withstand the impact of using these attributes, they would remain mediocre at best. Where is this place that allows you to quench your flesh? Yang Kai couldn't help wondering. I don't know. Luo Yao shook her head. This is the first time we have come here. You should have heard Guiche that day. No one has entered this place for many years. The only reason we were able to find this place at all was that Ji Peng's ancestor left a map behind in an ancient record we accidentally found. Ancient records? Yang Kai frowned. My ancestor has been here before. The tall man named Ji Peng also completed his meditation and walked over to the lake to join the conversation. He obtained many benefits from this place and left some clues behind when he passed on. By following those clues, I was able to find the space array hidden inside that asteroid sea. Luo Yao chuckled and looked back towards Yang Kai to say, "Boy, don't think it was easy to find that space array. You also stepped through it, so you should know that the space array itself was built atop a great asteroid, one that no doubt drifts about randomly with the asteroid sea, constantly changing direction. If one isn't careful, they might pass right by it and never notice." Fortunately, Ji Peng's ancestor was able to calculate approximately where and when the asteroid upon which the space array was built would appear, and as long as we conducted a thorough search of that region, we would be able to find it. Even so, it took us nearly an entire year before we finally found it. The problem is that I don't know where they got wind of this news, but after they did, they began relentlessly pursuing us, causing a lot of our comrades to die. We will get our revenge for this in the future. Ji Peng coldly snorted. His thin face filled with ruthlessness as he turned unceremoniously to Yang Kai. "Little brat, we're only letting you hear all this because you've been quite obedient this whole time, and as long as you continue to be so, when we find that place, naturally you'll get a share of the benefits." "And I know my place," Yang Kai responded sincerely. After half an hour, everyone was fully restored and Ji Peng continued to study the animal skin drawing while giving out directions to everyone. No real dangers appeared along the way. One day, as Guiche was leading the way, he suddenly stopped and stared towards the front with a dignified expression. A couple of dozen kilometers or so in front of him was a vast expanse of yellow sand with a storm whipping about that blotted out the sky, creating a barren landscape seemingly devoid of any vitality. An inexplicable yet dangerous aura pulsed from this land, and when Guiche and the others released their divine senses to investigate, they were surprised to discover that they could not explore into this region, as if the yellow sandstorm was somehow blocking their divine senses. Guiche turned his eyes to Yang Kai and motioned for him to check it out. Without saying a word, Yang Kai nodded and proceeded cautiously towards the yellow sandstorm. After a short while, he came to the edge of the yellow sandstorm, circulated his strength to guard his body, then stepped inside. The flying yellow sand was like a million tiny blades that banged into and cut at Yang Kai, giving him a rough beating even though he was protecting himself with his Saint Chi. Yang Kai managed to keep his eyes open to survey his surroundings, but he could barely see a meter in front of his face. Guiche and his group had noticed the danger of this place, so how could Yang Kai not have detected it? Yang Kai then released his divine sense enhanced with his comprehension of the Tao of space to leaping quickly cover the surrounding region. Yang Kai quickly learned everything about this place, including how it stretched out roughly 30 kilometers in every direction and was filled with earth and wind attribute energy. These two energies wove together to form a large airtight net, blocking Guiche and his group's divine senses. Yang Kai thought this was a natural phenomenon, but when a fierce aura suddenly approached him from a certain direction, he realized he was wrong. There was a powerful aura that pulsed with malicious intent hidden inside this world of yellow sand which clearly belonged to a living creature. Yang Kai stood motionless as he stared with widened eyes in the direction of the aura's source, trying to determine what it was that was moving towards him. The earth began to tremble as the fierce aura drew closer and closer to himself. At the same time, Yang Kai smelt a stench that nearly made him faint. Yang Kai couldn't see anything clearly and was only able to notice that the earth was constantly subsiding as more and more yellow sand was kicked up and swept into the air by the strong winds, blurring his vision even further. Silently, two huge pincers stretched out towards Yang Kai's head. As these pincers opened and closed, they seemed like they were slicing through space, causing a sense of crisis to well up in his heart and prompting Yang Kai to quickly withdraw. The moment he left the yellow sandstorm, Yang Kai saw two scarlet eyes staring at him from within. An invisible pressure came from inside the sandstorm, making it difficult for Yang Kai to even breathe. His wind and thunder wings opening, Yang Kai's speed increased to its maximum in an instant and he flew out a dozen kilometers in an instant. A pair of purple pincers passed through the spot Yang Kai was originally at, slicing apart his afterimage. Cold sweat dripped from Yang Kai's forehead as he flew over to Guiche and the others without looking back. A moment later, he arrived in front of Guiche with a completely pale face. "What did you find?" Guiche hurriedly asked, with Ganji, Luo Yao, and Ji Peng also staring at him expectantly. "An ominous beast." Yang Kai frowned. "It can resist the power of the wind and earth, has 2 large pincers and crimson-red eyes. It also looked like it had a barbed tail and could perfectly camouflage itself in the sandstorm. Even if one was standing right next to it, it would be difficult to discover. It's clearly very dangerous." "Was the surface of its body purple?" Guiche's expression changed, asking urgently. Yang Kai thought for a while and nodded. "Yes, just as I left. Its pincers emerged from the sandstorm and they were indeed purple." "Do you know what it is?" The other 3 also turned expectant eyes towards Guiche. Guiche suddenly grinned and put on a smug look. "Scarlet-tailed purple armored scorpion? Have you heard of it?" Hearing this name, the faces of the other 3 lit up and excited light flashed across their eyes. Ganji even yelled, "Seriously? Is it really a scarlet-tailed purple armored scorpion?" From what Yang Kai saw, plus my own judgment, it should be a scarlet-tailed purple armored scorpion. "And we've finally found something good. Ha ha ha, even if we can't find that body-tempering place now. As long as we kill that scarlet-tailed purple armored scorpion, this trip will have been worthwhile," Guiche laughed. "But the scarlet-tailed purple armored scorpion is a 9th-order monster beast, equivalent to an origin-returning realm master. Can the few of us really kill it?" Luo Yao's peach blossom eyes flashed with concern. "There shouldn't be a problem," Ganji thought for a while before responding confidently. "Monster beasts are just monster beasts in the end. Moreover, after having lived in this place for so long, it probably has very limited fighting experience. If it can only move against us on instinct, we can definitely take it down." "Fair enough." Ji Peng didn't have an opinion, an eager look appearing on his face. "Is that monster beast valuable?" Yang Kai asked suspiciously. Guiche grinned. "More so than a low-level 10th-order monster beast at least. Most monster beasts don't have anything of value on them besides their monster cores. Although sometimes a beast's claws, teeth, or skin have some use, their value is still quite limited. But this scarlet-tailed purple armored scorpion is completely different. Whether it is its carapace, tail, or pincers, they can all be used to refine artifacts, and those artifacts will definitely be at least origin grade. Its blood and poison are also useful for alchemy, and its monster core can allow a cultivator to improve their strength. Its whole body is a treasure. The most valuable item, though, is its monster core, because it is a monster beast that wields 2 different yet perfectly fused attributes. If a cultivator can refine its core, they will be able to gain insight into both the wind and earth attributes, very likely allowing them to comprehend a more profound type of strength. "Do you think it's valuable now?" After hearing all that, even Yang Kai became interested. Generally speaking, a cultivator's body could only contain 1 attribute of energy at a time. It wasn't that this was a hard limit, but rather that achieving more than that was prohibitively difficult. Achieving mastery over a single attribute was often more than enough for a single cultivator to dedicate their entire lifetime to. However, most cultivators could use multiple different attributes with the help of martial skills or artifacts. For example, beforehand, Yang Kai was able to use Yang attribute and Yin attribute energies with the help of his unyielding golden skeleton. He could also use wind and thunder attribute energy with the assistance of his wind and thunder wings. Of these 4 attributes, though, the primary ones were the Yang attribute and Yin attribute energies, and Yang Kai had dedicated most of his life as a cultivator comprehending their mysteries. In the end, he had managed to fuse these 2 attributes together to create the monstrous demonic flame which was capable of incinerating all creation. As for the wind and thunder attributes, Yang Kai could only use them when he summoned his wind and thunder wings. The core of the scarlet-tailed purple armored scorpion, which innately contained 2 different yet perfectly fused attribute strengths, was of immense value. Guiche's group of 4 gathered together, each of them displaying soaring fighting intent as they discussed they planned out their attack. The scarlet-tailed purple-armored scorpion was a ninth-order monster beast, equivalent to an origin-returning realm cultivator. The four Saint Kings would have to bear a certain amount of risk if they wanted to kill it, but from their confident appearances, it was apparent they felt their odds of success were high. None of these four people were foolish though, so naturally, they wouldn't charge in without a plan. Xianxia was not included in this discussion. As a third-order saint, he wasn't qualified to participate in this battle, and he didn't try to force his way in either, simply standing to the side looking bored. After an hour, everything had been discussed and Wuxia let out a snicker. Immediately, he rushed towards the area covered by the yellow sandstorm with Ganji and Ji Peng, exchanging a stern look before following after him. Luo Yao wore a charming smile as she brought up the rear. The four people wore varying looks, but all of them ignored Xianxia, soaring off like bolts of lightning, soon disappearing from sight. After a while, Xianxia noticed strong energy fluctuations coming from the distance as the sandstorm seemingly became more violent. Even from several dozen kilometers away, Xianxia could smell the toxic scent of the scarlet-tailed purple-armored scorpion. Brilliant flashes from martial skills and artifacts blossomed, sometimes mixed with the shouts of the four Saint Kings. Obviously, they were engaged in a fierce struggle. Xianxia squinted his eyes and stared towards their direction, but he could see nothing but blurry figures darting in and out of the sandstorm. With the passage of time, the ominous aura gradually became weaker, and the energy fluctuations emitted by the four cultivators led by Wuxia became stronger and stronger. Obviously, they were preparing to put down this ninth-order monster beast. Thinking it was about time, Xianxia flew over to the other side in an unhurried fashion, a light smile of satisfaction appearing on his face. When he arrived, he found that atop the yellow sand was a house-sized beast lying down motionless, its vitality extinguished. Wuxia and others were all wounded, and even though they were still standing, they were panting for breath. The man named Ganji was in an especially miserable state with a long wound across his thigh that was bone-deep. This wound had nearly cost him his manhood, and as Xianxia looked in his direction, he couldn't help feeling a sense of sympathy. Without even thinking about processing the spoils of victory, the four people took out pills to help restore themselves. Xianxia walked up to the monster beast carcass, and after circling a few times, he reached out and knocked his fist on its hard carapace, marveling at its toughness. He could tell that Wuxia and the others were right. The carapace of this scarlet-tailed purple-armored scorpion, as well as its pair of pincers and its barbed tail, were all excellent materials for artifact refining, and as long as they were supplemented with some suitable ores and an appropriate artifact refiner could be found, creating an origin-grade artifact would be guaranteed. It was no wonder they all got excited when they heard about this scarlet-tailed purple-armored scorpion. After half a day of hard work, the four of them gradually finished restoring themselves from their great battle. Wuxia first consulted with the other three before walking over to the scarlet-tailed purple-armored scorpion, tearing open its carapace plates on its more fragile abdomen, then exploring its interior with his hand for a moment before taking out its green and yellow monster core. Wuxia laughed. This core along is worth no less than 50,000 high-rank Saint crystals. Good. I'll hold on to it for now, and when we get out of this place we'll find someone to sell it. Then everyone will get an equal share of the Saint crystals. Saying so, regardless of whether the others were willing or not, he put it directly into his space ring. Xianxia could clearly see that all three of the others were frowning, apparently a little unhappy at Wuxia's conduct. None of them objected. Wuxia then proceeded to divide up the scarlet-tailed purple-armored scorpion into 8 pieces. He himself took away the hard shell on the back of Monster Beast, which could be used to create an excellent artifact armor, while Ganji obtained the scorpion's tail, while the 2 huge pincers were evenly divided between Ji Peng and Luo Yao. Xianxia stood aside and watched. He did not participate in the battle, so naturally, he was not qualified to obtain any of the spoils. The small amount of blood that was left was also pocketed by Wuxia, allowing Xianxia to come to some conclusions. Although this kind of distribution was somewhat selfish, it could reluctantly be considered fair. Even if these people had some objections, they weren't big enough to voice them. As for Xianxia's opinion, none of them would care. Let's take a break. Guiche commanded, and everyone began meditating again. Ji Peng took out the animal skin again and began carefully studying it with a frown. Suddenly, Ji Peng let out a cry of surprise, startling everyone else who turned to look at him only to see him in a jubilant state, nearly dancing and jumping for joy. "What did you discover?" Guiche hurriedly asked. "I believe we're not far from our goal," Ji Peng said with a face full of smiles. Any dissatisfaction with the distribution of the scorpion by Guiche swept far, far away. After hearing what he said, everyone raced over to Ji Peng, with Xianxia also wearing an expectant look. The animal skin was filled with all kinds of strange symbols, but at the topmost position was a huge mark which seemed to be their ultimate destination. In other places on the animal skin, there were pictures that seemed to represent special locations. "Look at this yellow area. I didn't know what it meant before, but now I understand. It must represent where the scarlet-tailed purple armored scorpion made its nest." Ji Peng pointed to the animal skin and explained. "If this mark is where we are, isn't this cyan area, the jungle we just passed through?" Guiche asked thoughtfully. "Then this is the lake we stopped at." Luo Yao also pointed to a place to express her opinion. "It should be, so as long as we continue to move forward, we should be able to reach our goal in a few days." As soon as these words came out, everyone's mood became excited. "It seems there's danger up ahead," Xianxia interjected, pointing to a mark on the animal skin that looked like a flying bird. Understanding at first glance that it wasn't an existence they should provoke. Flying beasts were always more difficult to contend with than those restricted to the ground. They were both fast and agile. In the same order of monster beasts, flying beasts could always display superior combat power than their land counterparts. "One step at a time. If there really is danger in that place, we'll just bypass it," Guiche declared. After resting for a while, everyone restored themselves to their peak condition and the group set out again. The flying bird picture on the animal skin made everyone in the group somewhat nervous, so they raised their vigilance as they traveled, looking up into the sky from time to time, but even after traveling quite some distance, they did not spot any traces of monster beasts. This development caused some confusion among the group and even made them worry that they had gone the wrong way. Suddenly, though, a brilliant arc of light appeared up ahead, and a rampaging thunder and lightning aura surged up, causing everyone's expression to become solemn. Looking around, the group soon spotted a relatively short tree standing about a dozen kilometers away from them with sparse leaves constantly flickering with white lightning. The divine senses of the five all rushed out to investigate their surroundings, and after confirming there was no danger around them for 100 kilometers, they slowly approached the tree under Guiche's leadership. A short time later, the group of five stopped in front of the tree and stared at it curiously. The tree, as tall as a human, contained a potent thunder and lightning attribute energy, and the few dozen leaves it had all seemed to be condensed out of the purest lightning essence. These leaves seemed like they were crafted from fine crystal or translucent jade and shimmered with light. "What kind of tree is this?" Luo Yao asked curiously. With the exception of the unlearned Xianxia, everyone in this group could be considered relatively well-informed, but none of them could recognize this tree. "Isn't it recorded in the ancient record your ancestor left behind?" Ganji turned to look at Ji Peng, who slowly shook his head. "No. Perhaps this tree didn't exist when he came here. Such a strange tree couldn't have been formed for no reason. Are you hiding something from us?" Ganji stared Ji Peng with clear traces of disbelief. Ji Peng coldly snorted and replied unpleasantly, "Why would I need to hide anything? This is a bird wood." Guiche suddenly shouted with a look of excitement filling his eyes. "Bird wood." The three parroted in surprise, Ji Peng quickly turning around and staring at Guiche. "You mean, the bird pattern on the animal skin map should be a bird species of monster beast which died here. Its flesh and monster core then gave birth to this bird wood," Guiche shouted, his look becoming somewhat frantic. Ji Peng also seemed to think of something and quickly said, "It is recorded in the ancient books my ancestor left behind that he saw a giant bird clad in thunder and lightning. He even mentioned that this beast was likely a thunder luan." Gasps of shock echoed all around as everyone's face couldn't help showing expressions of fear, with Guiche and the other three glaring towards Ji Peng angrily. Ji Peng just shrugged. If I told you about it earlier, none of you would have come. In any case, now that Thunder Luan is dead, there's no need to worry about it. You knew there was a Thunder Luan in this place, yet you dared lie to us about it? When we leave this place, we'll settle this account. Guiche ground his teeth. Hearing the four of them quarreling, Yang Kai soon realized that the so-called Thunder Luan was an exceptionally rare 10th-order monster beast. And after it died, the vitality and energy of its body and monster core would breed a birdwood. Birdwoods only sprouted in the places where powerful bird-type monster beasts died, and the chances of one appearing were very small. Out of every 10,000 high-order bird-type monster beasts that fell, perhaps only one birdwood would appear. The characteristics of each birdwood were different and depended entirely upon the attributes of the monster beast which bred it. The Thunder Luan was a thunder attribute beast, so naturally the birdwood its corpse had given rise to also had a strong thunder attribute to it. Although Ji Peng concealing the existence of this Thunder Luan had caused his partners some dissatisfaction, with Guiche even swearing to settle accounts with him afterwards, the immense value of this bird would still made all of their eyes red with greed. After entering this place, besides Yang Kai, who only obtained a few herbs and some minor benefits, each of them had reaped a huge harvest. But with this thunder attribute bird would bred from a 10th-order monster beast standing in front of them, all of them found it difficult to conceal their excitement, and they temporarily put aside Ji Peng's deception. The group of four started to dig up the surrounding area. A cold light flashed across the depths of Ji Peng's eyes which only Yang Kai, who happened to be observing him, noticed, but he feigned ignorance while helping with the excavation. After a while, a huge pit appeared inside of which lay a huge skeleton over 300 meters in length. From the appearance of the skeleton, it was clear it belonged to a bird-type monster beast, but all its flesh and blood had long ago disappeared and its monster core was nowhere to be seen. Even its bones had become withered and frail. All the vital energy of this 10th-order monster beast Thunder Luan had been transferred to the small birdwood. Guiche pushed his Saint Chi to protect his entire body before carefully pulling up the entire birdwood, not daring to damage even the smallest of its roots. Seeing that he was going to put such an incredibly precious treasure into his space ring again, the other three immediately wore frowns. Guiche ignored them though and proceeded to stuff the birdwood into his space ring. Although he vowed to fairly distribute the profits from this treasure's sale after they left, anyone could see that he simply wanted to take sole possession of this birdwood. All of a sudden, the celebratory mood became somewhat subtle. Yang Kai stayed out of these matters as he was secretly guessing that if more benefits appeared before them, the other three wouldn't hesitate to act against Guiche. However, with their destination not far away, the three others could only suppress their anger and wait until they achieved their objective before making their next move. The atmosphere of this team became tense and Yang Kai followed behind them without a word, trying to be inconspicuous. The further the group of five traveled, the more desolate the landscape became. It seemed like starting from the area where the scarlet-tailed purple-armored scorpion lived. The land became barren and the once lush environment transformed into a wasteland where even the world energy was thin. After flying forward for some time, everyone suddenly felt a strange energy fluctuation coming from up ahead. At the same time, the blood in each of their bodies became somewhat agitated, dyeing their skin red. Their surging pulses and rising temperatures caused each of them to feel excited and agitated, their eyes gradually becoming bloodshot as their breathing became heavy. "We've found it!" Ji Peng shouted and without hesitation flew his star shuttle towards the source of the energy fluctuations with the others chasing after him closely. The strange waves of energy became more and more intense, stimulating everyone's blood flow. Yang Kai could even hear his own heart violently throbbing inside his chest. This situation was very abnormal, and Yang Kai immediately became vigilant. A moment later, the group of five rushed to a spot above a great pit filled with bright red liquid which looked as thick as blood. This liquid reflected the bright sunlight which beamed down on it, giving it a strange yet beautiful appearance. "Is this the body-tempering divine pond?" Guiche turned to Ji Peng. Ji Peng nodded heavily, his eyes full of joy. "How do we use it?" Ganji hurriedly asked. They had paid a huge price and suffered many losses just to find this pool. So now that it was so near, he couldn't wait to temper his body with it and enhance his physique. The root of any cultivators was their body, and minor benefits obtained along the road could never be compared to a fundamental improvement of one's aptitude. There's no special method to use this thing? Ji Peng laughed before plunging into the blood-red pool with a great splash. Ji Peng's head soon re-emerged and he let out a groan, seemingly suffering from some pain. But soon, the pain disappeared and was replaced by endless joy, his face showing a look of ecstasy, as if he was receiving massive benefits. His second-order Saint King aura involuntarily bursting out. Anyone could detect that his vitality was rapidly improving. Guiche, Ganji, and Luo Yao had all been acting vigilantly up until now, for fear that Ji Peng was still hiding something from them. But after seeing him so easily jump into the blood-red pond, none of them hesitated any longer and jumped into the body-tempering divine pond, lest the benefits be snatched up by Ji Peng alone. The pond was not too big, only about 100 meters in diameter, and it was impossible to tell how it came to be. But regardless of all this, when the three of them entered it, they all showed happy expressions. Yang Kai stood still without moving. Ji Peng opened his eyes and gave him a glance while yelling, "Kid, just sit at the edge. You won't be able to withstand the impact from the middle section." "I can come in too?" Yang Kai looked surprised. Ji Peng laughed. "We told you when we first met, didn't we? As long as you cooperated with us honestly, there will naturally be benefits for you. That time has come." Yang Kai frowned and didn't wish to rush in rashly, but no, he could not avoid this situation. He walked to the edge of the pond and sat down as Ji Peng told him to. The moment he entered the pond, Yang Kai's face changed. From all directions, fierce pressure bombarded him, causing him a great deal of pain, as if his 5 viscera and 6 organs had all suffered a heavy blow, causing his face to suddenly go pale. But in the next moment, the pain disappeared and was replaced with indescribable comfort. An inexplicable force filled the pond and immediately began penetrating into Yang Kai's body. Under the impact of this force, Yang Kai clearly felt that his blood was undergoing some subtle changes. Just like Ji Peng earlier, Yang Kai's vitality began surging and his life aura became stronger. Yang Kai quickly used his divine sense to examine himself. Saint Qi flowed quickly through his meridians while his golden blood surged through his vessels, absorbing the strange power from the pond, which was pouring into his body. Fantastical changes began happening. Yang Kai noticed that among his golden blood, a faint point of brilliant golden radiance appeared. This needle-tip-sized drop of radiant golden blood seemed to contain unimaginable energy. Yang Kai was shocked. This newly formed blood was somewhat almost identical to the blood of great demon god. Because of the unyielding golden skeleton, Yang Kai's blood had gradually changed to a golden color over his years of cultivation. In the beginning, this change wasn't obvious, and his blood would only contain faint hints of golden light. But with the improvement of his cultivation, these faint wisps of gold began replacing the original red in his vessels. A few years ago, the blood in Yang Kai's body had lost all red pigmentation, and only a shimmering golden color remained. However, Yang Kai knew better than anyone that although his golden blood possessed strong restorative abilities, it was still several grades worse than great demon god's demon god golden blood. Yang Kai didn't know how to transform his golden blood into a more purified and powerful form and could only continue to cultivate and increase his strength in the hopes that as he did so, his golden blood would become purer. This time, following Ji Peng and the others to this so-called body-tempering divine pond, Yang Kai had reaped an unexpected gain. Yang Kai instantly realized that this body-tempering divine pond was not designed to quench one's flesh, but rather to enhance their blood. Increasing one's vitality this way would subsequently make one's body stronger. Ji Peng may have misunderstood the true role of this place. This quenching was actually better and more thorough than a simple quenching of the flesh. At this point, Yang Kai no longer hesitated and began actively trying to draw in the strange power which flooded the pond, his consciousness constantly observing the newly born golden blood in his veins, watching as it grew in size from a large needle tip to a grain of rice, then a large bean. When a single drop of golden blood was finally formed, and Yang Kai was able to fully appreciate its splendor, Yang Kai grew very excited. The power contained in this drop of golden blood was incomparable to his previous golden blood. It was true demon god golden blood. Another drop of golden blood slowly began forming, repeating the previous sequences of events. After an hour, Xianxia had managed to form 3 new drops of golden blood in his body. He didn't know how much the others had gained, but he was certain they had benefited just as much as he had. Just as Xianxia was immersed in his enjoyment, he heard Ganji suddenly call out in shock, "Where is Ji Peng?" This shout awakened all the people who were immersed in the joy of their blood's enhancement, and after they all took a glance around, they confirmed that Ji Peng was indeed missing. Xianxia's face sank and he quickly released his divine sense to search the area, soon noticing Ji Peng's life aura near the bottom of the pond. "I knew you were up to something," Guiche roared as he swiftly dove down into the pond to see what Ji Peng was doing. His body had just disappeared though when Ji Peng suddenly leapt out of the blood-red pond and stood midair overlooking the group beneath him in a calm and composed manner. On his face was a smug look of satisfaction. Xianxia didn't even think about it and immediately tried to leap out from the pond. But before he could act, an irresistible suction appeared from the bottom of the water, as if 2 giant invisible hands had grasped his ankles and refused to let him move. At the same time, an endless stream of bubbles began breaking through the surface of the blood-red pond, bursting with resounding pops. The strange, omnipresent pressure in the water suddenly became 1,000 times more intense than before and began flooding into the bodies of everyone still inside it. The drop of demon god golden blood that had just started to form in Xianxia's body grew at an incredible rate and was soon completed. Submersed in the body-tempering divine pond, Guiche, Ganji, and Luo Yao all shivered and paled. Even if they were masters at the Saint King realm, they couldn't bear such intense pressure. Xianxia was also in great pain and couldn't help feeling as if he was being crushed to death. But the rapidly condensing demon god golden blood in his body provided him with some relief, causing his condition to actually be the most relaxed of the group. The other 3 were all on the verge of collapsing. "Ji Peng, what are you doing?" Ganji growled angrily. Ji Peng just stood high up in the sky and stared down dismissively at them, not saying a word, as if he was looking at a dead man. Guiche yelled, "Ji Peng, you better pray I don't escape from this, otherwise I swear I'll give you a fate worse than death." Ji Peng let out a laugh and confidently replied, "I've already activated the sacrificial altar at the bottom of the divine pond. All of you will be its offerings. No matter how strong you are, you won't be leaving from here." "Sacrificial altar?" Guiche's face changed as he roared indignantly. "You were still hiding things from us." Ji Peng sneered. "If I had told you everything about this place, I'm afraid I'd be the one being sacrificed right now. I'm well aware of your sinister and treacherous nature. Guiche, did you think I brought you here out of goodwill? In the face of such great benefits, who wouldn't want to monopolize them? It's laughable how you fell for such a simple trick. I'll tell you now, this body-tempering divine pond contains all kinds of incredible mysteries. It can indeed quench one's flesh, but if one wants to thoroughly temper their body, they need to offer it enough sacrifices. After you die, you'll serve the same role as that Thunder Luan, your vitality and cultivation all transforming into pure energy I can absorb to enhance my own strength." After hearing what he said, the faces of everyone else present turned even whiter, only now realizing Ji Peng's true intentions and completely recognizing his sinister nature. Although Guiche and Ganji weren't the most cunning of people, they weren't fools either. Ordinarily, it would have been impossible for them to fall for such a simple and obvious trap. On the way here, they had constantly been on guard against Ji Peng, but having obtained so many great benefits along the way, their vigilance had become lax, and once they saw Ji Peng jump so carefully into the body-tempering divine pond, they had followed without giving it much thought, and it was only after the trap had been sprung did they understand they had been played. It was too late for regrets though, so all of them went all out to struggle free from the body-tempering divine pond's grip, but the harder they struggled, the more intense the force holding them down became. All of them were only capable of keeping their heads floating above water, while their bodies were forced to accept the potent effects of the tempering divine pond as they waited for death. "Ji Peng, you even plotted against me?" Luo Yao asked in a pitiful voice as she directed a sad look towards Ji Peng. Ji Peng's expression slowly became solemn as he glanced over at Luo Yao with some pity, only a long time later letting out a sigh. Although we have only known each other for a few years, I don't want you to die. I like you quite a bit, and I planned on sharing the benefits of this body-tempering divine pond with you. Luo Yao immediately wore a smile upon her charming face, thinking that Ji Peng was going to spare her. But in the next moment, Ji Peng slowly shook his head. Unfortunately, it's too late for such thoughts now. With the sacrificial altar already activated, you cannot come out and I won't go in. The number of sacrifices is too small as it is. When my ancestor came here originally, there were a dozen people in his group. My ancestor's aptitude wasn't very high, and when he came here, his cultivation was the same as that little brat's. Saying so, he pointed at Xianxia, only a third-order saint and the weakest out of his entire team. Anyone else could bully or order him around. And when they discovered the benefits of this body-tempering divine pond, he wasn't even granted a share. The rest of his group occupied the divine pond to reap the benefits for themselves. But who could have known that being forcefully excluded actually saved my ancestor's life? After everyone else died, my ancestor waited until the divine pond had calmed down completely and then proceeded to enjoy all the benefits here alone. He recorded in my family's ancient records that if not for this divine pond, even if he had cultivated desperately, at most he could have become a second or third-order Saint King. But do you know what realm he ultimately achieved? Third-order Origin Returning Realm. Just one step away from the Origin King realm. Ji Peng's tone of voice rose higher and higher as he became emotional, his hands waving in an exaggerated manner. My aptitude is also not great, but it is still much better than that old man's, so with the help of this body-tempering divine pond, I will have a chance to reach the Origin King realm in this lifetime. Origin King realm. Wuxia suddenly let out a peal of wild and dissolute laughter as blood flowed from the corners of his lips, nose, eyes, and ears. Ignoring his own distress, he stared at Ji Peng contemptuously. With just the benefits of this place you believe you can reach the Origin King realm? The Origin King realm isn't something so cheap. Ji Peng didn't show any annoyance though and simply declared, after you all become part of me, you will be able to bear witness to my rise. Luo Yao, although it saddens me to see you die here, I take comfort in knowing you will soon be joined to me forever as a part of me. And I will also set up a tablet in your memory. Don't worry though, my future is still long. And I believe I will meet another woman who I can fall in love with. Insane. You're completely insane. Luo Yao's face went pale as he called out hoarsely. Say whatever you like, Ji Peng said as all traces of pity left his expression, leaving behind only a cold glint in his eyes as he overlooked the group below him on the verge of death. Before, he had simply been waxing nostalgically, and now that he was done, there was nothing more to say. With the exception of Xianxia, the condition of everyone in the pond was gradually getting worse. Blood began to boil, meridians began to break, and flesh began to tear, causing red blood to flow into the body-tempering divine pond, dyeing it an even darker shade of crimson. On the other hand, Xianxia only felt uncomfortable while his life wasn't currently in danger. A person's body had a natural capacity, just like how only a certain amount of Saint Qi could be stored in one's dantian, only a certain amount of vital energy could be stored in one's body. If this capacity was forcefully exceeded due to some external factor, dire consequences would be incurred, and in the worst-case scenario one could even explode. Xianxia was an exception to this rule, however. In the past, he could condense yang liquid to store in his dantian, and currently he could store excess Saint Qi directly in his physique. His physical body was all but bottomless. The strange force present in the body-tempering divine pond was similar to Saint Qi in the air, both of which could be used to cultivate. Ji Peng activating the sacrificial altar at the bottom of the divine pond greatly enhanced the effects of this strange force, and it was currently hammering Wuxia, Ganji, and Luo Yao's bodies to death. However, Xianxia could transform this strange energy into pure demon god golden blood, essentially allowing him to undergo a limitless amount of tempering. Quickly, he had condensed 10 drops of demon god golden blood, each one containing a terrifying amount of energy. With a tragic sound, Ganji's body suddenly swelled up as a pulse of energy burst from his body, battering his surroundings as blood poured out of his 7 orifices, giving him a miserable appearance. Bang! A muffled noise rang out and a giant splash emerged from the body-tempering divine pond. After the blood-red water fell back to the pond, Ganji had disappeared, and in his place, on the surface of the pond, was a large amount of minced flesh and broken limbs. Soon after, these remnants sank into the water and dissolved, transforming into a massive amount of pure vital energy. After Ganji died, the body-tempering divine pond boiled up even more, and the surge of bubbles coming from its depths increased in intensity. Xianxia clearly felt a massive amount of the strange force pour into his body from all around, nearly causing him to cry out in pain. Ji Peng calling them sacrificial offerings wasn't just idle talk but instead a true fact. With Ganji's death, the effects of the body-tempering divine pond became even stronger. The next moment, Luo Yao's scream echoed through the air, and the enchanting yet dignified young woman followed in Ganji's footsteps. Before she died, Luo Yao's beautiful eyes sent an unforgettable glare of hatred towards Ji Peng, seemingly wishing to imprint his ugly countenance into her soul. The two exploded one after the other, with no bones left. The effectiveness of the body-tempering divine pond suddenly increased by 1 level. Soon after, even the strongest Guiche found himself unable to handle the increased pressure and shamelessly called out, "Ji Peng, save me and I'll give you everything inside my space ring." Ji Peng simply stared at him though and said, "Once you die, and the body-tempering divine pond calms down, I'll naturally obtain your space ring and everything inside it. You'll suffer heaven's punishment for this." Guiche raged angrily. Ji Peng laughed wildly. "Maybe, but you won't be around to see it." As soon as he spoke those words, Guiche's body burst open and his space ring flew up into the air before landing back into the pond, disappearing beneath its surface. Ji Peng's eyes flashed with greed, but he didn't rush out to collect it. After waiting for a while, he suddenly wore a strange expression and muttered, "How come their souls didn't come out?" Ever since Ganji died, Ji Peng had been on guard against his former teammates' souls escaping. He had been waiting to ruthlessly extinguish them as soon as they appeared. But to his surprise, when his former companions died, no trace of their souls could be seen, as if they had been destroyed and become sacrifices when their bodies exploded. After thinking about it for a moment but not coming up with an answer, Ji Peng turned his attention towards Xianxia, frowned, and asked, "Kid, why are you still not dead?" Xianxia's forehead was filled with veins as sweat poured down his skin, seemingly enduring unimaginable pain and torment as he haltingly spoke, "I don't know. Maybe because my strength is too low and I had to sit at the edge of the pond. Do you want to step inside and check for yourself?" Ji Peng coldly snorted, "Do you think I'm an idiot?" Xianxia nodded firmly. "You really must be an idiot, standing there so smugly, not even realizing that someone is sneaking up to attack you from behind." Ji Peng's face changed immediately as he rapidly turned around to see a twin-horned blood-stained man who was concealing his aura while rapidly approaching. DG. Ji Peng's face paled greatly when he saw who it was. But after noticing the condition of this monster racemaster, Ji Peng calmed down greatly. He didn't know what danger DG had encountered, but at this moment his body was filled with wounds and he looked quite exhausted. Most importantly, DG was currently all alone. All of his former companions had disappeared. Xianxia had been following Ji Peng's group around for several days, and although they had run into a few bumps along the way, they had not encountered too much danger because Ji Peng had the records left behind by his ancestor, allowing them to travel a relatively safe route. But DG was different. In order to acquire the treasures hidden in this place, his group had run into several dangers which had killed most of them. Now only DG remained, and even he was in poor condition. He had wanted to sneak up and kill Ji Peng from behind, but he hadn't expected Xianxia to suddenly expose him. DG shot Xianxia a vicious look, annoyed that he spoiled his good deed. "How did you find this place?" Ji Peng asked coldly. DG snorted heavily. "I'm not deaf. Did you think I wouldn't hear so many agonized screams?" Saying so, his expression became fierce as he stared at Ji Peng and asked, "Is what you just said true?" Can this body-tempering divine pond really improve one's physique? Did your ancestor really cultivate to the third-order origin returning realm? What of it? Jipeng didn't bother making any denials as DG had obviously been listening in for a while now. DG had absolutely heard what Jipeng was saying to the others. Lying served no purpose now. Good, good. DG was overjoyed. Half a year ago when we started pursuing you guys, I had no idea what you were up to. Only that there must be some huge benefits to be had, but now I understand completely. Jipeng, you're not my opponent. If you want to survive, leave obediently. Otherwise, don't blame me for acting ruthlessly. A trace of panic flashed across Jipeng's face. He was only a second-order Saint King while DG was a minor realm higher than him. Ordinarily, he would not be DG's opponent, but soon after, that panic disappeared and Jipeng sneered. Are you sure about that? If you could easily kill me right now, you wouldn't bother saying anything. The truth is you don't know which of us would come out on top if we were to fight right now, do you? You saw through me? DG smiled lightly, without the slightest bit of embarrassment as he nodded. Since you understand, then I won't waste any more time. There's just the two of us here now, and neither of us is confident he can beat the other. So why don't we sit down and talk it out? What do you want? Jipeng looked at him angrily. Although Jipeng knew that DG had brought people into this place, he hadn't expected to run into him at the last moment. Jipeng couldn't wait to rush out and kill DG, but he didn't dare act rashly as he wasn't certain he could win. Simple, we share. In any case, this pool is so large that the two of us can both temper our bodies. Both of us gain some benefits while not making things awkward for the other. DG proposed positively. Good, I agree. Since the situation is currently like this, I don't want there to be any more complications. Giving you a few benefits rather than risking everything is fine with me? Jipeng nodded happily. So it's settled? DG chuckled. Jipeng nodded again. The two stared at each other across the several dozen-meter gap between them, both seemingly quite satisfied with this quick negotiation. Suddenly, a dark golden artifact armor appeared on Jipeng and he slashed forward with his hand, sending out a series of sharp Saint Chi blades towards DG. At the same time, a burst of silver light appeared in DG's hand and a silver spear appeared. The patterns on the spear seemed to come alive and a heavy water attribute aura burst out from it, crashing into Jipeng's attack like a tsunami. A battle had instantly broken out between these two men who had just a moment ago seemingly reached a compromise. Xianxia sat in the divine pond with a sneer on his face. He knew that from the start these two could not coexist peacefully, because Jipeng would absolutely not allow DG any time to restore himself. Once DG recovered, Jipeng would definitely not be his opponent. So he had no choice but to go all out with DG, even if he wasn't confident he could win. Although Jipeng's cultivation was inferior, DG's condition was poor, so neither side knew who would emerge victoriously. After spectating for a moment, Xianxia lost interest in this battle and instead focused all of his attention on his own matters, stopped resisting the force trying to drag him down, and submerged himself into the pond. He wanted to see what was hidden beneath the surface. The dark red water churned violently, just like a rolling boil, the strange energy contained within it constantly smelting Xianxia's blood. Xianxia squinted slightly as he allowed himself to be pulled under. It wasn't long before his feet touched the bottom of the pond, and when they did, the suction which was restricting his movements disappeared. Deep in the pond's depths, it was too dark to see anything, the blood-red water obscuring all light from the surface. Xianxia had to take out a luminous stone and hold it in his hand to see around himself. Releasing his divine sense, Xianxia quickly discovered something which appeared to be the source of the strange power flooding the water, and assumed it was the sacrificial altar Jipeng had mentioned. Instead of rushing to the sacrificial altar, though, Xianxia began to look around the bottom of the pond. After a while, Xianxia found a space ring lying quietly on the ground. Retrieving the space ring and probing it with his divine sense, Xianxia wore a grin on his face. Inside the space ring was the thunder attribute birdwood that had been formed after the death of the 10th order monster beast Thunder Luan, the carapace of the scarlet-tailed purple-armored scorpion, countless herbs, and the monster cores of several 7th and 8th order monster beasts. It was Gui Che's space ring, Yang Kai placed the ring in his sleeve pocket with great satisfaction. Because space rings had their own independent spaces inside them, they could not be stored inside the Demon Mystic Tome. Although space rings couldn't be loaded into the Demon Mystic Tome, the universe bags could. Yang Kai didn't understand the principle behind this but didn't spend much time thinking about it. Guiche's space ring had most of the good things that had been harvested from this little trip. But after finding it, Yang Kai's determination did not waver and he continued his search. The body-tempering divine pond wasn't very big, only about 100 meters in diameter. But surprisingly it was more than 1,000 meters deep. It wasn't difficult to find a few space rings in such a place, and soon the ones that belonged to Gongji and Luoyao were also pocketed by Yang Kai. Above the pond, blasts of energy filled the air as the shouts of Ji Peng and DG rang out. The two were obviously fighting a fierce battle. Yang Kai paid attention to them for a while but quickly figured the two of them wouldn't be able to reach a conclusion for quite some time and shifted his attention to the sacrificial altar. A moment later, Yang Kai arrived in front of the strange altar and silently began examining it. There was an extremely profound spirit array engraved on this altar and was surrounded by a number of brilliant saint crystals that gave off a sensational energy fluctuation. However, as he examined them closer, Yang Kai soon realized that these weren't saint crystals. They possessed an even denser and richer concentration than high-rank saint crystals. Were these things an even higher grade of saint crystal? Yang Kai wondered to himself, uncertain of what to call these things. Atop the altar were visible, densely packed spirit array lines that crisscrossed with one another. It was extremely complicated. This place was obviously not naturally formed, but instead artificially arranged. As for which master had created it, that was unknown. Countless points of light, like the fireflies in the night sky, floated around this sacrificial altar in a beautiful dance. These wisps of light seemed to compose a stream of energy that was constantly pouring into the altar. Atop this sacrificial altar were innumerable rare and precious treasures that Yang Kai couldn't even begin to identify. Under the action of this sacrificial altar, the effects of these precious treasures were activated, creating the strange energy which tempered Yang Kai's blood and allowed him to create the purest demon god golden blood. Yang Kai was ecstatic and immediately sat cross-legged beside the sacrificial altar in order to obtain the fiercest tempering. However, Yang Kai hadn't imagined though that the moment he sat down, the sacrificial altar would begin shaking and the entire body-tempering divine pond would become stimulated. Suddenly, all the blood-red liquid in the divine pond began swiftly gathering towards the sacrificial altar. Yang Kai paled, not having anticipated such a development. He tried his best to move away from the sacrificial altar, but under the raging torrent of the crimson water, he was unable to even lift a finger. Releasing his divine sense, Yang Kai clearly noticed that the water level of the entire body-tempering divine pond was rapidly decreasing. It wasn't that the amount of water was reducing, but rather that the liquid itself was being compressed due to the attraction of the sacrificial altar. This anomaly also alarmed Ji Peng and DG, who stopped their life or death battle and turned towards the body-tempering divine pond in shock. When he discovered that the divine pond was rapidly drying up, Ji Peng let out a mad scream and recklessly threw himself towards it to try to stop whatever was happening. He had worked so hard and schemed against so many people just for the opportunity to temper his body in this pond and was just about to achieve his wish. Although DG had interfered at the last moment, Ji Peng wasn't about to compromise. But if the body-tempering divine pond disappeared, all his previous efforts would be for naught. Ji Peng completely ignored DG and crazily tried to stop the water level from falling again. But no matter what he tried, it had no effect. DG, on the other hand, was dumbfounded and simply stood still. In less than 10 breaths of time, the body-tempering divine pond, which was over 1,000 meters deep, had completely dried up, with all the crimson liquid compressing itself down into a small blood-red crystal cocoon. When Ji Peng arrived at the bottom of the pond, he saw Yang Kai trapped inside the blood-red cocoon while the sacrificial altar, which was supposed to be right there, had actually disappeared. He stood in place, his eyes dull, as if he had lost his soul. A moment later, Ji Peng let out a crazed shout and began furiously attacking the crystal cocoon. the full force of his second-order Saint King cultivation bursting out, causing DG, who was standing far away, to be slightly startled. He couldn't afford to take on Ji Peng's desperate outburst. But weirdly, the blood-red crystal cocoon was seen to be forged from the hardest steel and forget about destroying it. Ji Peng's attacks couldn't even leave a scratch on it. The ground suddenly trembled and began to split, sending the native monster beasts into a panic as they noticed the impending crisis, all of them trying to take shelter or flee for their lives. DG's expression also changed greatly, and he didn't dare to remain, swiftly flying off. Ji Peng also stopped his attacks and after releasing his divine sense realized that something was wrong. Finally recovering a bit of his sanity, he made one final effort to break open the crystal cocoon before preparing to leave. However, he was once again too late. From the blood-red crystal cocoon, an irresistible suction force broke out and all living things in this strange, isolate world, from the beasts to the plants, had their vitality drawn out of the bodies, transformed into wisps of glowing light, and sucked into the cocoon. Ji Peng was forced to watch as his skin dried up and his body withered, his vitality rapidly passing, and after a short time, which to him felt like thousands of years, his bones broke down into dust and were scattered to the wind. Before he died, though, he managed to meet eyes with a terrified DG who had also been drawn back. Amidst the vast starry sky, a starship carefully avoided the stray asteroids as it sailed towards its goal. The starship wasn't big, less than 200 meters in length, the smallest type in the entire starfield, barely Saint King grade low rank. The hull of such a starship wasn't very sturdy, and from the dents and scrapes on its hull, it was clear it had suffered damage from numerous asteroid hits. If it was a higher-grade starship, such damage would never have been possible. This small starship sailed extremely cautiously and seemed to be full of cargo, so its overall speed was quite slow. Inside the ship, there were about 60 cultivators of varying strength, each one performing their routine duties. For this expedition, they had been ordered to go out to mine some or from a nearby or star for half a year, and it wasn't until a few days ago when they had filled their cargo hold that they had set sail for home. There were originally 100 of them, but now only a bit more than half of them remained. They didn't know why, but the star they had traveled to had many ferocious beasts appearing and disappearing, resulting in the deaths of many of their companions while they were mining. The survivors were all just happy to be returning alive, so they spoke no words of complaint. 6 months of hard work could be exchanged for many years of freedom, so they were quite satisfied. After this trip, they would receive a large amount of remuneration and could use that money to purchase better secret arts and martial skills while possibly even acquiring higher-grade artifacts. Everyone aboard the starship felt a sense of accomplishment as they imagined such a bright future. Wu Yi, a first-order Saint King, was this starship's captain. At her age, having such cultivation on Shadowed Star made it clear her aptitude wasn't bad. The elders in her family had asserted that as long as she cultivated diligently, she would definitely reach the origin returning realm in the future. Her strength wasn't the strongest on the starship, though. That title belonged to her family's foreign elder, who possessed a third-order Saint King cultivation. This foreign elder was very old, though, and besides sitting in the starship to ensure its safety, he was aloof to all other matters. Even Wu Yi wasn't qualified to command him. There were other Saint Kings around as well. After all, this mining expedition required a certain amount of strength to protect itself. Wu Yi stood in the starship's power room at this moment and was gazing out the transparent window, staring at the starry sky, a sense of longing flashing across her beautiful eyes. Shadowed Star was her home, but the world energy on Shadowed Star couldn't be compared to other major cultivation stars in the star field. It was a barren place with scarce resources and supplies, lacking in high-grade precious treasure and powerful masters alike. The strongest masters on Shadowed Star were just second-order origin returning realm cultivators, and many of them were already over 2,000 years old. It wasn't even clear how much battle strength these masters had. Shadowed Star was also situated in a relatively remote part of Hung Luo Starfield, and was surrounded by countless dead stars nearby. To find N or star to mine, a several-month-long journey was necessary. During this period, everyone on board the starship was constantly on edge, fearing that the ship would be destroyed. Because of its remoteness and barrenness, The great forces in the star field rarely paid any attention to this area, and even the ruthless Galaxy Ridge and abandoned lair didn't run over to engage in plunder and bloodshed. Although Shadowed Star was technically part of the star field, it had almost become its own independent world, forgotten by everyone else. Wuyi very much wanted to leave Shadowed Star and take a look at the outside world. When she was young, she had listened to many stories of the wondrous sights and scenes of the other cultivation stars in the star field as well as the great masters at the Origin King realm. The unimaginable beauty and splendor of those other cultivation star where one could cultivate many times faster than on Shadowed Star, all the various different kinds of people, the saint crystals and pills that could never be used up. Compared to those other cultivation stars, Wuyi felt like a little countryside girl who had never seen the world. She yearned for everything in the outside, but the status of her family severely limited her freedom, and since she was quite sensible, she had soon begun focusing on making contributions to her family instead of her childhood dreams, offering to lead this dangerous trip to the nearby star. For every 10 starships that were sent out, it would be fortunate if 5 returned from this task, so no one dared to take on this job if at all possible. In the eyes of the elders of the family, this was almost akin to punishment rather than a duty. However, with Wuyi being a woman, in her family's eyes, even if she were to accidentally die outside, it wouldn't damage the foundation of the family, so they had easily agreed to her leading the expedition. If it was instead a male direct descendant of the family, the elders would never have allowed him to take on such a dangerous mission. A group of old short-sighted fools. No wonder they can only wait to die on Shadowed Star. So what if I'm a woman? Wuyi snorted softly, clenching her fists while secretly vowing that one day she would leave Shadowed Star and escape from this suffocating prisoner's cage, find her own freedom, and bask in the wider and more exciting world. Young lady, a third-order saint hurried over, his eyes greedily lingering on Wuyi's splendid mountains and enchanting valleys before he quickly lowered his head and focused his gaze on his feet. What is it? Wuyi turned to look at him. I just saw Yufeng taking some men with him outside. What are they up to? Senior Yufeng just discovered a blood red nearby and thought it might be something of value. So he took some people with him to retrieve it, but who could have known it was actually something much stranger than expected? The cultivator quickly explained. What's the situation? Wuyi immediately became curious. While she was staring out the window, she had indeed seen Yufeng lead a team of people out on their star shuttles. Now it turns out they had brought back some kind of strange red I think it would be best for young lady to go and see for herself. This subordinate also isn't quite clear what happened. The cultivator let out a hollow laugh. Wuyi's delicate brow furrowed before she nodded. Lead the way. Staying inside the starship all day long was driving her crazy with boredom, so now that there was a new novelty around, naturally it attracted Wuyi's interest. Perhaps Yufeng was having similar thoughts, which lead him to rashly leave the starship to bring back the strange blood red Somewhere in the starship's hold, a large group of people stood around a large crimson crystal about 10 meters in diameter, all of them marveling at this strange treasure. Although they were all curious about what this crystal was, none of them dared to approach it except for the one who had originally retrieved it, Yufeng. Yufeng glanced around at the companions with a look of disdain and snorted. So what if there's a dead man inside this thing? What's there to be afraid of? Saying so, he lightly patted the huge blood-red crystal with his palm. Yufeng, what good thing did you find? A clear and pleasant-sounding voice called out from nearby, and upon hearing it, all the crew members who were just lazily standing around straightened up their backs and fixed their sloppy faces. Even Yufeng stood up tall and tried to wear a mature and reliable expression. The crowd automatically separated and allowed Wuyi to step forward. The light, floral scent which seemed to waft from her figure caused this group of men to greedily and joyfully sniff the air. Wuyi shook her head helplessly. On this starship, she was literally the only woman. This group of wolf-like men, after many months of hard labor, were by now starved for companionship, and Wuyi couldn't bring herself to care about them showing such an ugly performance because even if she reprimanded them, they would all just wear stupid grins on their faces as if receiving her scolding was an honor for them. Wuyi had long ago resigned herself to this kind of display. Over time, she had simply begun turning a blind eye to these situations, and the more she ignored them, the more presumptuous they became. Yufeng, on the other hand, stood up to enforce justice, punching a few of the bolder ones who had openly sniffed the air before putting on a fierce expression and shouting, "I'll kill anyone who dares act so disrespectfully to the young lady. Stand back and show some manners." While he was shouting, though, he too was taking down big gulps of air like a drowning fish. "It's fine." Wu Yi waved her hand casually as she walked over the blood-red crystal and asked, "Is this the thing you found?" "Yes, young lady." Yufeng rushed over to Wu Yi and pointed at the giant crystal. "At first I thought it was some kind of treasure, but I didn't realize until I actually obtained it that there was actually a dead person inside it. The poor bastard. I don't know how he died, but when I saw him drifting through the starry sky, I couldn't bear to just leave him there. So I brought him back and was planning to find a place to bury him on Shadowed Star." Wu Yi nodded gently. "Having a charitable disposition is good, especially considering your usual irritating behavior. And I didn't expect you to have such a side." After being praised, Yufeng's mouth curled into a grin that stretched from one ear to the other, clearly not knowing the meaning of the word shame as he openly boasted, "In fact, I just look a little rough on the outside while in truth I am a true gentleman on the inside." And scrupulous snickers and sneers echoed through the hold. Wu Yi wanted to laugh as well, but felt doing so was too shameful, so she covered her mouth with her delicate hand while resisting her urge to smile and said, "Are you sure the person inside is dead?" Yufeng was stunned for a moment before asking, "Can someone in this kind of state actually survive?" Wu Yi carefully looked at the people who were sealed inside the blood-red crystal. This man looked quite young, around 30 years old at most, and although he wasn't too handsome, compared to the worthless lot on this starship, he could be considered quite good-looking. Even though his eyes were shut tight at the moment, this young man's face seemed to have an inexplicable charm to it. Releasing her divine sense, Wu Yi wanted to check if this young man had any signs of vitality, but to her surprise, the blood-red crystal seemed to be able to block her probing. "Go invite foreign elder Xianxia to come and see if this young man has truly died or not," Wu Yi quickly said. Immediately, one of the crew left the hold. Foreign elder Xianxia was the strongest person on the starship. A third-order Saint King, Xianxia was the strongest master on the starship, and if he weren't already so old, he might have had hope of breaking through to the origin-returning realm. Perhaps he would know what this blood-red crystal was. Why bother inviting foreign elder Chang to come? Yufeng laughed, walking over to the crystal and patting it gently. "Even if this guy is alive, he can't come out. I just tried a moment ago. No matter how hard I strike this crystal, I can't even leave a scratch on it. I really wonder what it's made of." Yufeng laughed as he continued patting the blood-red crystal and boasting shamelessly. Wu Yi nodded in agreement. Yufeng was also a first-order Saint King, but he was much older than she was and had broken through much later in life. However, his strength was genuine, and since he couldn't scratch this blood-red crystal, it was obvious how tough it was. But only moments after those words left Yufeng's mouth, a cracking sound inexplicably rang out, and turning in the direction the sound was coming from, Yufeng's laughter caught in his throat, as if someone was choking him. His two eyes bulged as he stared at the scene in front of him, swiftly moving in front of Wu Yi to guard her as directed a vigilant gaze at the blood-red crystal. The cultivators in the surrounding also raised their guard and no longer wore their sloppy, relaxed expression. Wu Yi poked her head out from behind Yufeng's burly back, and after seeing what was happening, she couldn't help exclaiming, "Yufeng, did you break it?" At this moment, on the seemingly indestructible crystal, crisscrossing spiderweb-like patterns were rapidly spreading on its surface, and within a few breaths, the originally pristine crystal had become filled with cracks. It seemed as if it would break at any moment. Yufeng called out helplessly, "I didn't use any strength just now. How could I have known it would suddenly start breaking apart? It wasn't at all like this when I found it outside. No matter how many of us bombarded it, none of us could leave a mark on it. Young lady, please step back. There's something not right about this situation." Wu Yi nodded lightly and backed up a bit, but her eyes never left the blood-red crystal, as she was quite eager to see what would happen next. "Foreign Elder Chang is here," someone shouted excitedly. Everyone looked back and saw foreign elder Xianxia quickly walk in while stroking his neatly combed goatee. The group of cultivators in the ship's hold all saluted. When Xianxia arrived beside her, Wuyi asked, "Foreign elder Chang, do you know what this is? Why would someone be sealed inside such a crystal?" Xianxia frowned and released his divine sense to investigate, but moments later shook his head. "Young lady, this old master's vision is limited. I cannot determine what kind of material this is, but perhaps it is something from beyond our shadowed star." "From the outside?" Wu Yi's eyes brightened. "It should be AJ." A much louder cracking sound came from the blood-red crystal all of a sudden, and in the front of everyone's eyes. It shattered into a million pieces, scattering debris all over the hold, forcing the gathered cultivators hurriedly cover their faces. In the next instant, the man inside the crystal fell to the ground and calmly opened his eyes. He seemed to want to stand up, but was too weak to do so, eventually settling for sitting on the floor. "He's really alive?" Many cultivators paled, and even Wu Yi, who was extremely curious, wore a solemn look. A man who should be long dead suddenly appearing alive and well was something beyond this group's ability to understand. Multiple divine senses burst out and swept this young man from all directions. But after realizing this person seemingly had no strength, everyone felt relieved. Without any strength, he posed no danger, so naturally, there was no need for them to be vigilant. "He's no ordinary person?" Xianxia slowly shook his head. "It's impossible for an ordinary person to emerge safe and sound after being sealed in crystal. He's most likely just temporarily weakened. His cultivation is unknown, so if we allow him to restore himself—" Yu Feng's face changed and he took a step forward, his Saint Chi bursting out as he yelled, "I'll kill him!" The realm of this person who emerged from the blood-red crystal was unknown, and his origins were also unknown. Yu Feng naturally dared not take him lightly. "There's no need to kill him, is there?" Wu Yi quickly interceded. "Just looking at him, it's obvious he's still young, so even if his background is suspect, his cultivation shouldn't be too high. Restricting his movements should be enough. Is young lady curious about him?" Xianxia glanced over at Wu Yi thoughtfully. "Isn't foreign elder Chang curious as well?" Wu Yi smiled and stepped around Yu Feng, walked up the unknown young man, and squatted down to ask, "Can you understand what we're saying?" Seeing this young man nod, Wu Yi asked again, "What's your name? Where do you come from?" "Yangkai from Rainfall Star." Yangkai answered honestly. "Rainfall Star." Wu Yi raised her brow slightly. "It seems you really came from the outside. Rainfall Star is several years' journey from here, though. How did you manage to come here?" Yangkai slowly shook his head. "The last thing I remember was entering some strange place, then coming across a blood-red pool. I accidentally activated some kind of spirit array and then fainted. When I woke up, I was here." Wu Yi knit her brow thoughtfully. "Then you're saying you drifted all this way?" "I think so. Where is this place?" Yangkai frowned slightly. He wasn't used to being questioned like this. "Brat, just answer our questions honestly. Don't speak unless you're spoken to." Yu Feng yelled at Yangkai, raising his huge fist as if to warn him what the consequences would be if he didn't cooperate. "You're currently near Shadowed Star? Heard of it?" Yangkai shook his head again. He really had never heard of Shadowed Star. "It's understandable that you haven't heard of it. Shadowed Star is relatively remote. Most people from the star field wouldn't know about it. Hee, your courage isn't small. You don't seem nervous at all. What's there to be afraid of? You don't look like you have any malicious intent towards me." Yangkai grinned. "Whether or not that's true will depend on you. Haven't you heard that a woman's heart is impossible to know? Perhaps in the next instant, I'll have you killed. After all, we know nothing about you, and keeping a stranger aboard our starship is an unnecessary risk," Wu Yi said lightly. The smile on Yangkai's face immediately disappeared. Wu Yi giggled, seemingly very satisfied. "That's better. Good. Next question. What's your cultivation?" "Third Order Saint." Upon hearing this, everyone couldn't help breathing a sigh of relief. They didn't need to worry themselves over a mere Third Order Saint. Although there was a possibility that Yangkai was lying, considering his age, even if he wasn't telling the truth, his strength shouldn't be much higher. I still have a lot of questions to ask, but it looks like you're quite exhausted, so we'll end things here for today. Yufeng, take him to one of the rooms to rest and get him something to eat. Wu saw that Yang Kai's complexion was pale and decided to restrain her curiosity for now. Yufeng nodded before shouldering Yang Kai and taking him out of the hold. Not long after, when they came to an empty room, Yufeng kicked open the door and tossed Yang Kai inside before shooting him a vicious look. Brat, stay here quietly and don't try anything funny. If I see you acting the slightest bit out of line, I'll take your life immediately. I know. Yang Kai nodded. I'll behave. Yufeng turned around and was about to leave when he suddenly turned back to Yang Kai and said, What's in your space ring? Some saint crystals and pills, Yang Kai replied. Yufeng glanced around, confirmed there was nobody nearby, and was just about to say something when Yang Kai took the initiative to throw his space ring over. Yufeng caught it and swept its content with his divine sense, immediately breaking out into a grin and nodding to Yang Kai. Brat, seems you know what you should do. Good. Wait here a bit. I'll get you something delicious to eat. Saying so, Yufeng ran out of the room. Yufeng grinned as he strode off. Although Wu Yi insisting that Yang Kai be spared had made him a bit uneasy, being able to easily obtain so many saint crystals made Yufeng very happy. After turning a corner though, Yufeng saw Wu Yi standing there with a smile. Quickly hiding the space ring behind himself, Yufeng wore a big smile on his face. Hand it over. Wu Yi stretched out her hand to him. What could young lady be talking about? Yufeng feigned ignorance. That person's space ring is in your hands now, right? Wu Yi smiled sweetly. Yufeng sighed while putting on a depressed look before slowing walking over to Wu Yi and placing Yang Kai's space ring in her hand, saying in an exasperated tone, Young lady, can you not be so smart? Us men won't be able to hold our heads up if you keep acting like this. We're not robbers. Snatching someone else's possessions will only create unnecessary grievances. If people like you were running the family, would it be able to survive? Wu Yi rebuked him firmly. When Yufeng heard these words, he obediently lowered his head and sincerely apologized. After Wu Yi reprimanded him fiercely, Yufeng confessed to his crimes seriously and swore to not commit such offenses again before walking off in a distressed manner. Only after he left did Wu Yi search the space ring with her divine sense, a wry smile appearing on her pretty face as she muttered to herself. No wonder people say that there are so many saint crystals in the outside world that people never run out of them. A mere third-order saint actually carries so many high-rank saint crystals on him. The heavens are truly unfair. Although we can't snatch this, it should be all right if he willingly gives it to me. In any case, I did save his life. A short time later, Wu Yi took back her divine sense from the space ring and decided to discuss it the next time she saw Yang Kai. Inside the room, Yang Kai remained indifferent. The space ring he wore on his hand was just a guise. After all, in the star field, as long as one had a bit of strength, they would also have a space ring. The one on Yang Kai's hand only contained about 500 high-rank saint crystals as well as a few bottles of commonly used pills. Nothing he would care about losing. However, the approach of the man named Yufeng made Yang Kai raise his vigilance, quickly searching his sleeve pocket and only breathing a sigh of relief after confirming the presence of 3 other space rings. Although Yang Kai didn't know how much time had passed, the 3 space rings belonging to Guiche and his group had fortunately not been lost. After confirming that no one was watching him, Yang Kai quickly transferred the contents of the 3 space rings to the demon mystic tome. If these 3 space rings were lost, Yang Kai would definitely be distressed. Finishing doing all this, Yang Kai had time to investigate his situation. After waking up, Yang Kai discovered that his body was devoid of all Saint Qi as if he no cultivation to speak of, worrying him greatly. If a cultivator had no cultivation, they would just be an ordinary mortal. After a careful inspection though, Yang Kai calmed down. It wasn't that Saint Qi didn't exist in his Yang Kai's body however. It was just that all the strength he had accumulated over his years of cultivation had currently been exhausted. After discovering that his foundation was still intact, Yang Kai tried circulating his secret art and immediately found that he was able to absorb and refine the ambient world energy, allowing him to breathe a sigh of relief. As long as his foundation remained, It would only cost him some time to restore his strength, and with the help of his numerous pills and Saint crystals, that time wouldn't be too long. After at most a few days, Xianxia would return to his peak state, but in order to replace his once inexhaustible supply of energy would require a long period of accumulation. On the other hand, Xianxia's spiritual energy had not diminished and instead was stronger than ever. Using his divine sense to examine his body, Xianxia quickly became pleasantly surprised. The golden blood flowing through his veins now seemed far purer and denser than before. On top of that, he now possessed nearly 100 drops of the most orthodox demon god golden blood, each one of them containing a terrifying amount of power. This was true demon god golden blood, equal in might to the blood of great demon god himself. These 100 drops of blood had even greater restorative strength compared to the rest of Xianxia's already formidable blood. These 100 drops of golden blood also seemed to contain Xianxia's insights into the heavenly way and martial Tao, as well as his understanding of his own strength and its utilization. The former restlessness in his heart was instantly replaced with joy. Xianxia had no idea what had happened in the body-tempering divine pond, but he surmised that he had triggered some kind of spirit array linked to the sacrificial altar, which then caused the entire pool to compress into the blood-red crystal which had encased him. Afterwards, he had obviously drifted through the starry sky while his blood and body had been tempered, ultimately winding up in his current situation. His Saint Qi had not disappeared for nothing, and had likely been refined into his blood to assist in the formation of these 100 drops of golden blood. Now that his blood had become purer, Xianxia believed his vitality had also risen greatly, and the resilience and restorative strength he could display in battle would be far greater than before. In order to verify his conjecture, Xianxia gathered what little strength he had just managed to restore and gave himself a bone-deep wound on his palm. Golden light shone from the wound, and before blood could even flow out, the terrible wound sealed itself, and in less than half cup of tea's time, not even a scar remained on his palm. Xianxia took a deep breath to suppress his inner excitement. In the past, although he wouldn't consider such an injury serious, it would still have taken at least an hour or two to fully heal, but now half a cup of tea's worth of time was sufficient. His restorative abilities had indeed increased exponentially. After examining his body and determining that his current situation was only a short-term problem, Xianxia put down his worries and took out a piece of Saint crystal. Holding this crystal in his hand, Xianxia began circulating his secret art to draw out power from it, while at the same time he stuffed a handful of restorative pills into his mouth, refining these medicinal efficacies and Saint Qi. Feeling his strength slowly returning, Xianxia couldn't help feeling like he was being reborn. The heavenly spirit ghost orchid's mark on his chest had long ago disappeared, so Xianxia was able to infer that he had been in a comatose state for a long period of time. As for how long exactly, he had no way to judge. The woman he had spoken with before said they were currently near Shadowed Star, and that this Cultivation Star was several years away from Rainfall Star. That meant that Xianxia might have been sealed in that blood-red crystal for several years. During that period, the energy in the blood-red crystal had combined with his own Saint Qi and promoted the quality of his blood. When the energy in the crystal and his own Saint Qi were exhausted, the effects of the sacrificial altar ended and the crystal shattered. Xianxia didn't see any trace of the altar itself. The precious treasures which had been placed on the sacrificial altar should also have been refined into pure energy to help promote the quality of his blood. Although the whole affair had been somewhat haphazard and unpredictable, Xianxia had gained a lot of benefits. Although Yufeng was a bit rude and thuggish, he was still a man of his word and really brought over something good for Xianxia to eat. Xianxia didn't stand on ceremony and quickly swallowed down the food to assist him in his restoration. With his third-order Saint Realm cultivation, it didn't matter if Xianxia ate or not. But that didn't mean he didn't have any appetite whatsoever, and the food Yufeng had brought also contained a large amount of energy which was beneficial to him, so Xianxia didn't hesitate to consume it. Over the next night, Xianxia consumed 3 high-rank Saint crystals and accumulated a good deal of Saint Qi in his meridians. Of course, it was nothing compared to his peak. The next day, footsteps sounded in the hall outside, and the young woman who had spoken to him yesterday soon pushed open the door and walked inside, not even bothering to knock. Another cultivator who had accompanied her quickly pulled up a chair for her and set it down in a flattering manner. After Wu Yi took a seat, she waved at the cultivator, signaling that he could leave. The cultivator hesitated before asking, "Young lady, is leaving you alone with him appropriate? What's the problem?" Wu Yi glanced over at him unhappily. "Or do you think that you're stronger than me and can offer me some kind of protection?" The cultivator wore an embarrassed look and dared not remain, respectfully bowing before walking out and quietly closing the door. Taking a look at Xianxia sitting on the ground, leaning against the wall, Wu Yi giggled, "Feeling better?" Xianxia nodded, not knowing what this woman wanted to ask him. He felt that the cultivators on this starship didn't hold any malicious intentions towards him. Although Yufeng clamored about killing him, it was obvious he was just acting vigilantly. "You look better. I don't know how long you've been drifting through the starry sky, but this time if it weren't for my subordinate saving you, perhaps you would have gone on floating forever. If you had accidentally encountered a powerful star beast, being swallowed up is entirely possible." Wu Yi casually spoke, clearly trying to frighten him. "If you were swallowed by a star beast, your fate would have been quite miserable." Xianxia saw that she was playing with the space ring while speaking to him and immediately understood the point she was trying to make, grinning as he nodded. "You saved my life, so naturally I must offer my thanks. Unfortunately, I currently have nothing on my body as my only space ring was taken away by that guy named Yufeng yesterday." "So, you're offering me this space ring as thanks?" Wu Yi was overjoyed. "Great. Then this ring and its contents are now mine. No going back on your word." "I won't." Xianxia shook his head. Wu Yi extracted the contents of the space ring and stuffed them into her own ring before returning the empty one to Xianxia. "You're really rich. There were actually 500 high-rank Saint crystals in that ring. Don't you understand that excessive wealth easily attracts unwanted attention? Fortunately, you ran into my starship. If it was anyone else's, you likely wouldn't be alive right now. Does that much make me rich?" Xianxia scratched his head. "It doesn't." Wu Yi asked helplessly. That's right. You outsiders possess a lot of Saint crystals, but on Shadowed Star it's not the same. There are only a few Saint crystal mines, and they are all occupied by big forces. Holding one is impossible for a small family like mine, so we can only risk our lives by mining outsider stars, each time resulting in many deaths. "Are you all so poor?" Xianxia was utterly shocked. Since coming to the star field, he had never had to worry about Saint crystals. On the floating continent, he had robbed all the Purple Star and Sword Union cultivators, obtaining a lot of Saint crystals. On Rainfall Star, he had robbed the treasure of the Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce branch. He really didn't know that someone could be so happy about obtaining a measly 500 high-rank Saint crystal. What's more, it didn't seem like this young woman's identity was low. "You said you came from Rainfall Star? As far as I know, that Cultivation Star is owned by a force called Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce, right? Is Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce big? How many masters does it have? Are the strongest really Origin Kings? I heard that they build palaces entirely out of Saint Crystal and that they eat precious pills as snacks. Is that true?" "Is it?" Wu Yi let out a barrage of questions that nearly made Xianxia's head spin. Hesitating for a moment, Xianxia asked, "Have you ever been outside?" Wu Yi shook her head. "I've only moved about Shadowed Star. Everywhere else is too far away from this place. I heard that Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce does business all over the starfield, but you won't find them on Shadowed Star. It's really annoying. They look down on us far too much. Why can you only stay on Shadowed Star? Since you want to see the outside world, why not just go yourself?" Xianxia suddenly felt that this woman was a bit pitiful. She obviously longed for adventure, but was clearly fettered by something which made it impossible for her to leave. "Do you think it's easy to leave this place?" Wu Yi glanced at him meaningfully, causing Xianxia to unconsciously straighten up a bit. Without a suitable star chart, a solid enough starship, and a sufficient amount of resources, how can a several-year-long voyage be made? People here rarely go outside, and outsiders basically don't come over. Shadowed Star seems destined to become a forgotten place. After hearing what she said, Xianxia couldn't help thinking of Tongxian Realm. There were many similarities between the two, both were extremely remote, but Shadowed Star was obviously better than Tongxian Realm. At least they knew about the star field, whereas Tongxian Realm was completely isolated, not even qualified to explore the starry sky. Throughout the vast star field, existences like Tongxian Realm and Shadowed Star were definitely not rare. It was likely there were many such cultivation stars tucked away in unknown corners. For a moment, Yang Kai actually felt a subtle connection to this woman, and thinking about it, he muttered, "Actually, you're much better off than me." "How so?" Wu Yi asked curiously. "Do you know where I came from?" "A place where the strongest masters were third-order saints." Wu Yi's jaw dropped. "Don't believe me?" Yang Kai smiled. "It's the truth, though. We didn't know about star shuttles or starships, or even that there were other cultivation stars in the star field. We would sit beneath the stars and think that the third-order saint realm was the peak of the martial Tao. If I hadn't accidentally obtained a broken-down star shuttle and possessed enough skill to leap out from my world, no one would have even known such a feat was possible. I am the first and only one from the homeland to reach the star field. Most others still live their lives completely ignorant of this place's existence." Wu Yi stared at Yang Kai and only after a long time said, "You're quite pitiful." Melancholy was a strange thing. Once one found out that there was someone more miserable than them, their grief would immediately lessen. Yang Kai's words had given Wu Yi a sense of comfort. Compared to the homeland of this man named Yang Kai, Shadowed Star was nothing short of paradise. Having learned that Yang Kai had leapt out of Tongxian Realm all alone to explore the star field, Wu Yi's beautiful eyes filled with admiration. She obviously appreciated this kind of fearless behavior, and if she had the chance, she imagined she would make a similar choice. Unfortunately, all kinds of burdens kept her tethered to this place. As the two chatted, the atmosphere became harmonious. Wu Yi didn't have any hostility towards Yang Kai in the first place, and Yang Kai was the carefree sort, so he naturally didn't mind sharing some trivial things with her. It wasn't until Yu Feng came over to tell her something that Wu Yi unwillingly departed. After she left, Yang Kai continued to take out Saint crystals and pills while circulating his secret art to restore his strength. Time passed by, and a month later, Yang Kai finally restored his full third-order Saint realm strength, but he had yet to accumulate much Saint Qi in his body compared to the massive quantity he had originally possessed. As such, Yang Kai continued to refine Saint crystals to replenish his energy stores. Having become accustomed to an inexhaustible reserve of strength that no matter how much he squandered could never be used up, Yang Kai was a little uncomfortable with his current condition. The energy contained within each Saint crystal was quickly transformed into Yang Kai's strength. Saint Qi flowed rapidly through his meridians while his heart remained calm and steady. While cultivating, Yang Kai would constantly send his divine sense through his veins to examine his 100 drops of pure demon god golden blood. These 100 drops of golden blood were formed from the combination of the sacrificial altar's strange energy and Yang Kai's own massive Saint Qi reserves. But it was inevitable that these 100 drops would be used up, and if he wanted to generate more, what method was he supposed to use? The sacrificial altar from the body-tempering divine pond was no longer around, and Yang Kai could not completely remember the complex spirit array which was portrayed on it. Even if he wanted to reproduce it, it was impossible. As he focused on the golden blood flowing through his body, though, it suddenly became stimulated and began madly devouring his Saint Qi. Yang Kai, who had just managed to restore himself after so much effort, suddenly turned pale again and couldn't help feeling like he was about to collapse. Quickly checking himself, Yang Kai was startled. In an instant, he had lost more than half of the new Saint Qi he had just refined. This mass of Saint Qi had seemingly been swallowed up by the golden blood in his veins, and in return produced a needle-tip-sized drop of radiant gold. Naturally, this was the beginnings of a drop of pure demon god golden blood that had previous not existed. Yang Kai thought about it for a while and soon understood. Relaxing his control, Yang Kai allowed his golden blood to continue devouring his Saint Qi. His hard-cultivated Saint Qi abruptly decreased, but in return, the needle-tip-like drop of golden blood became larger. Sure enough, Yang Kai couldn't help silently celebrating. Pure demon god golden blood could be generated inside his body simply by consuming his own Saint Qi. This also confirmed his previous speculations about why his vast reserves of Saint Qi had completely disappeared, They had literally be replaced by the 100 drops of golden blood. In the future, if Xianxia wanted to condense more pure golden blood, he only needed to consume a sufficient amount of Saint Qi. However, the consumption involved in this process was enough to cause Xianxia a lot of distress. An entire month of restoring his Saint Qi had only allowed Xianxia to condense a single rice grain-sized drop of pure golden blood, which meant that he would need to cultivate for at least 3 months before he could form a complete drop. Despite this, however, Xianxia remained calm. Saint Qi could be restored through cultivation, taking pills, and refining Saint crystals, so as long as he found the right place and method, it wouldn't be difficult to obtain Saint Qi. But demon god golden blood was an entirely different matter. Now that he had a method to convert Saint Qi into golden blood, Xianxia had nothing to complain about. Although this transformation only worked one way, and the results weren't as flexible as his previous yang liquid, at least he wouldn't have to worry about running out of demon god golden blood. There were still 100 drops of golden blood in the body, and Xianxia wasn't in a hurry to produce more. So his current focus was to accumulate as much Saint Qi as possible. With his mood improved, Xianxia was able to cultivate even faster than before, consuming 10 Saint crystals in a single day. Wuyi soon appeared again. Over the past month, she would run over to Xianxia whenever she had free time. The stories Xianxia told fascinated her to no end, and she would listen to any information or news he had no matter how dull or inane. The more she listened, the more she looked forward to the outside world. If she could, she would order the starship to change direction immediately and head towards that wondrous world. Seeing her sitting in front of himself like an eager young child, Xianxia couldn't help feeling a slight headache and said helplessly, "Wuyi, I only entered the star field a few years ago, so everything I've seen and heard I have already told you about." Xianxia really couldn't bear it anymore, and he couldn't tell if a person's curiosity flourishing to such an extent was his misfortune or hers. "If you think hard enough, I'm sure there will be something you haven't told me about. As long as it's related to the outside world, anything will do." Wuyi stared at Xianxia with undisguised enthusiasm. The first few times she had said these words, Xianxia had racked his brain to come up with a few trivial things to satisfy her curiosity before sending her way. But today he was not going to compromise. This little lady was simply an insatiable wolf. If he compromised today, she would no doubt be back tomorrow for more. "No, I really don't. Other than the sex I had with women, what else haven't I said?" "Then tell me about that. I want to know if there's any difference between how men and women interact with each other in the outside world compared to Shadowed Star." Wuyi immediately became intrigued and completely ignored the pitch-black grimace on Xianxia's face. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Yufeng arrived to save Xianxia. Seeing his panicked look, Wuyi's face also became serious as she asked, "What happened?" "The starship is being pursued by a group of black rock beasts." Wuyi's face suddenly went pale and she hurriedly stood up, rushed over to the window, and looked towards the rear. After seeing the situation outside, her expression became even uglier. No longer caring about digging into the most intimate details of Xianxia's life, she hurried out of the room together with Yufeng. After they left, Xianxia also went to the window and looked around, soon discovering a large group of black-colored monster beasts chasing after the starship. There were at least 300 or 400 of these beasts within Xianxia's field of vision, with the distinct possibility there were more outside his line of sight. During this past month, Xianxia had heard about black rock beasts from Wuyi. This monster beast lived amongst the starry sky and had incredibly tenaciousness vitality. On top of that, it fed upon minerals and ores, so among asteroid seas, dead stars, and/or stars, black rock beasts were a common sight. Wuyi called these monster beasts star beasts. Black rock beasts weren't very strong, the weakest only being 5th order, which was equivalent to human race immortal ascension boundary cultivators. The strongest were 7th order, equal to Saint Kings, while the majority were 6th order. However, what gave Wuyi the biggest headache was that black rock beasts lived in large packs, and not only did they enjoy feeding on raw ores, they also ate starships. Starship hulls were forged from a variety of rare and precious ores, and were nothing less than a delicacy to black rock beasts. With their thick and strong skins, black rock beasts were difficult to kill. Most of the starships that were lost sailing around Shadowed Star were not destroyed by starry sky storms but rather by black rock beasts. When a starship was consumed by these star beasts, the cultivators inside no longer had any place to take shelter, and mass casualties would result. For many years, the major forces on Shadowed Star suffered heavy losses because of these star beasts and had once tried to wipe them out, but black rock beasts were like bamboo shoots after the rain. After cutting one crop, another would soon emerge. It could be said that black rock beasts were the biggest enemy of the cultivators on Shadowed Star, and also an obstacle preventing them from entering and integrating into the starfield. If they weren't dealt with, truly joining the starfield was impossible. Wu Yi's starship was only Saint King grade low rank and could not resist the teeth of black rock beasts. So when she heard that black rock beasts had been spotted, Wu Yi's demeanor had immediately darkened. Xianxia thought about it for a while before also leaving his room. Over the past month, although he had failed to integrate into the starship's crew, no one had come to cause trouble with him despite his cultivation not being low. Wu Yi had also allowed him to walk around the starship as long as he didn't enter any restricted areas. In the corridor, cultivators rushed out, each of them emitting thick murderous intent with Yufeng taking the lead to organize them. Many people were cursing and clamoring to fight to the death against the black rock beast, vowing to live and die with their starship. Everyone turned a blind eye to Xianxia. At that moment, the starship suddenly shook, and a sensational wave of energy erupted, causing all the hurrying cultivators to grin. Xianxia looked out a nearby window and saw a white stream of light shoot out from the starship and blast open a hole in the black rock beast group. Dozens of black rock beasts instantly turned into blood mist. Wherever the beam of light passed, space became empty, with not even dust remaining behind. Crystal cannon. These powerful offensive artifacts were a common feature on starships and were powered by large amounts of Saint crystals. Although they had tremendous power, their consumption was equally immense. With the financial resources available to Wu Yi and her crew, a single shot was likely their limit. Sure enough, after the first crystal cannon round, the hot-blooded cultivators aboard the starship charged out of its hatch and followed Yufeng into battle. Even Wu Yi, wearing a fiery red artifact armor that covered her entire body, was no exception. The clusters of red flames on her artifact armor pulsed with Saint-grade low-rank intensity, illuminating her beautiful face in a dazzling blaze. After these cultivators left, the hatch slowly closed again. Xianxia released his divine sense and swept the starship, soon discovering that aside from himself, less than 10 people remained aboard the starship. These 10 people were the minimum number needed to keep the starship running. Everyone else had gone out to engage the black rock beasts in a fierce battle. After experiencing the affluence of Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce, suddenly seeing such a motley crew desperately trying to protect a small Saint King grade low-rank starship, Xianxia's mood was a bit complex. If the starship belonged to Shui Yu instead of Wu Yi, she wouldn't have even left her room. Her safety was far more valuable than a single starship. But then again, if this was Shui Yu's starship, instead of a single round from the crystal cannons, that crazy woman would likely continue firing until the entire swarm of black rock beasts was wiped out. Outside the starship, dazzling bursts of light from artifacts and martial skills lit up the starry sky as the cultivators released wave after wave of varied attribute attacks towards the dense pack of black rock beasts. Even though the black rock beasts possessed extremely hard skins, they weren't able to withstand such violent attacks, and only moments after the battle began, more than 25th and 6th order black rock beasts had been slaughtered. The cultivators from the starship coordinated with one another, acting as a single unit while keeping their distance from the main black rock beast pack under Wu Yi's command. There were only 50 to 60 of them in total, many times fewer compared to the huge number of black rock beasts. Faced with such a numerical disadvantage, there was no other tactic the cultivators could use in this fight. Xianxia's ears rang with the sound of shouts of cheers as the people who stayed behind to operate the starship encouraged their companions. These people's cultivations were the lowest amongst everyone, so they weren't eligible to participate in such a battle. A pitiful scream suddenly echoed, and a third-order saint was torn to pieces by a black rock beast, resulting in his death. Immediately, someone took his place on the battle line and pushed back the black rock beast which had broken through, and then in the next moment, dozens of attacks raced over and exploded the black rock beast. Wu Yi's commands were orderly and efficient, making it clear this was not her first time handling such a battle. Everyone was experienced, and so long as this situation continued, even if Wu Yi's group was small in number, victory would ultimately be theirs. But Yang Kai was keenly aware that everyone who was fighting outside was anxious, seemingly knowing what this pack of black rock beasts would do next and understanding that it would not be an action they could resist. Another scream came out, and a cultivator at the outermost position of the formation was set upon by several black rock beasts which quickly bit him to deaths, raising the death toll to 2. The black rock beasts didn't devour this cultivator's body, spitting out his broken flesh and bone after biting him to death. Black rock beasts only fed on minerals and ores, not flesh and blood. Shio shio shio. Suddenly, a dark green liquid spewed out of the black rock beasts' mouths, and in the blink of an eye, Wu Yi and her team were surrounded by this turquoise wave. All of them wore grim expressions as they quickly avoided this wave under Wu Yi's command. One unlucky cultivator was accidentally contaminated by the green liquid, and smoke immediately burst from his figure. The majestic artifact armor worn on his chest was quickly melted away, and the flesh beneath it was also corroded, exposing his white bones. This turquoise liquid was too corrosive. Yang Kai's brow furrowed and couldn't help worrying for Wu Yi and the others. At present, his strength had not been completely restored, and at most he could display the combat effectiveness equivalent to an ordinary third-order saint. If Wu Yi and her group were defeated and the starship was destroyed, everyone would suffer disaster, and it was uncertain if any of them would be able to survive. Yang Kai suddenly felt that he had to do something. Dong dong dong. A series of muffled thuds came from the ship's hull, and Yang Kai saw that a number of black rock beasts had actually circumvented Wu Yi's defense perimeter and directly begun spraying the starship with their corrosive green liquid while taking bites out of the hull. The sounds of twisting and cracking metal echoing throughout the starship was enough to send cold chills up the spines of everyone inside. Wu Yi could no longer afford to concentrate her forces and split them up into groups of 3 to 5 cultivators to intercept these black rock beasts. Many cultivators fearlessly leapt towards the starship to slaughter the attacking enemy. With each passing moment, more people died, with dozens of black rock beasts surrounding each team of cultivators. Yufeng joined forces with 3 others to protect Wu Yi, using their own Saint Qi to block the enemy from harming her. Wu Yi cultivated a fire attribute secret art and brandished a pair of flaming rings on her hands, swaying her body in a mesmerizing yet deadly dance, condensing flames into dragon-like shapes that deterred most black rock beasts from approaching her closely while incinerating the ones who got too close. These black rock beasts seemed afraid of fire. The pack of black rock beasts noticed this anomaly quickly, and more began rushing over. Yufeng and his comrades did their best but couldn't stop the crashing tide of beasts. To make matters worse, there were several 7th-order black rock beasts attacking them now. 7th-order monster beasts were equivalent to Saint King Realm cultivators. 2 7th-order black rock beasts were pinning down Yufeng, while the others in the pack were confronting Wu Yi and her guards, surrounding them in an airtight formation. An even more intense flame aura erupted from Wu Yi's rings, and a blast of heat rushed out to hit one of the 7th-order black rock beasts, resulting in a fiery explosion that sent the beast reeling in pain, but failed to kill it. Black rock beasts were thick-skinned and possessed extremely tenacious vitality. Wu Yi could easily kill those that were 5th or 6th order, but she had no way to kill a 7th-order one in short span of time. Having suffered this flame attack, the 7th-order black rock beast seemed to become enraged, opening its mouth wide to reveal its rows of irregularly serrated fangs and thick corrosive acid. Using its companions for cover, this 7th-order beast bit towards Wu Yi's delicate waist while she was distracted. As long as this attack succeeded, Wu Yi wouldn't be able to avoid death or serious injury, as the potent acid from the black rock beast's mouth would immediately corrode her body. Wu Yi saw this clearly but was unable to resist. Yufeng and the others also went all out to help but were ultimately powerless. A sense of desperation rose in Wu Yi's heart as she stared stunned at the 7th-order black rock beast biting towards her. At that moment, a drop of golden light suddenly appeared in front of her. There was no sign of this golden radiance the instant before, as if it had simply come into existence. As soon as this golden light appeared, it transformed into a great spear that exuded an energy fluctuation so astonishing it caused everyone nearby to pale. The spear shot forward towards the open mouth of the seventh-order black rock beast like a bolt of lightning, blasting a hole in its head as if it were made from rotten wood. The golden spear continued on unabated, piercing through more than a dozen black rock beasts. None of these thick-skinned star beasts was able to resist this attack, with those in the fifth and sixth order bursting into blood mist the instant they were struck, disappeared right before everyone's eyes. The stunned Yufeng froze up, forgetting the dangerous situation he was in as he stared at the golden spear which was rapidly approaching him, an icy feeling gripping at his heart. He was certain he would soon be dead. But to his surprise, the golden spear seemed to have its own spirituality, and as it rushed in front of him, it suddenly swerved, brushed past his body, and ran through the black rock beast behind him. All the cultivators on the scene stared blankly, their heads filled with fog, wondering who this golden spear belonged to. Wuyi also couldn't help staring. The situation which was supposed to have resulted in her death had been easily resolved by this golden spear, allowing her to escape. Still shivering slightly, she began sweeping her eyes over her surroundings, her pretty face filled with doubt. She wanted to find the owner of this spear. She had no idea there was such a powerful master among her subordinates. This spear alone would be more than enough to make that subordinate a pillar of her family. Wuyi naturally placed extreme value on this cultivator and his profound method. After searching for a while, though, she was unable to find any likely candidates. Suddenly, she saw Yang Kai standing next to one of the starship's windows. Yang Kai appeared to be waving towards her while saying something. Wuyi couldn't tell what he was saying, but she could tell that he didn't have any trace of nervousness on his face. He seemed to be cheering her and the others on. Wuyi shook her head and didn't pay any more attention to Yang Kai, instead pulling Yufeng and the others out of their stupor and leading them to attack the black rock beasts again, while quietly observing the golden spear. With the appearance of this strange golden spear, the course of the battle shifted. The cultivators who had originally been at an absolute disadvantage were now reinvigorated, each of them desperately pushing their strength as they slowly regained the initiative. The golden spear swam through the battlefield, as if it had a mind of its own. Each thrust it made sweeping through and killing several black rock beasts, oftentimes saving the lives of cultivators who were on the verge of death. Everyone recognized this peculiar golden spear's fierceness and began to coordinate with it, cleaning up the scattered and injured black rock beasts which were thrown into chaos by its attacks. Wuyi also took decisive action and ordered all her remaining subordinates to fall in behind the spear, allowing it to act as the vanguard while they mopped up the remnants. In this way, it would only be a matter of time before this pack of black rock beast was exterminated. The black rock beasts that had jumped onto the starship were swiftly cleaned up. As this was happening, the other black rock beasts seemed to become aware of the threat from the golden spear and fell back to consolidate their group. The pack withdrew slightly while glaring towards the starship, but none of the beasts dared to launch an attack at will. Wuyi also raised her hand, also ordering her subordinates to fall back. There were too few of them, while there were still hundreds of monster beasts in the black rock beast pack. Rushing in would only result in more casualties. The scene suddenly froze, with the black rock beast now acting cautiously, not willing to come forward, and Wuyi's group not eager to provoke them. The deadlock, however, was soon broken by the golden spear. Before anyone realized it, the energy fluctuations from the golden spear suddenly soared in intensity, and the 3-meter-long spear rapidly grew to over 20 meters in length. The giant spear next flickered, disappearing from everyone's sight, as if it had never even existed. Just as everyone began searching for traces of the giant spear, though, a brilliant burst of golden light emerged from the center of the black rock beast pack. This burst of light swiftly engulfed the entire pack, causing many 5th-order and 6th-order monster beasts to instantly disintegrate. Even the 7th-order black rock beast began howling in pain as their black flesh was torn apart and red blood flew from their bodies. When the golden radiance finally dissipated, the massive black rock beast pack had shrunk significantly, with over 100 of them now nowhere to be seen. The remaining black rock beasts didn't dare linger any longer, and led by the several remaining 7th-order monster beasts fled in fear. The group of cultivators stood frozen in place, and only after the black rock beasts had long disappeared into starry sky did an eruption of cheers resound, everyone's face filled with the joy and happiness appropriate for surviving a life-or-death disaster. The cultivators cheered and shouted, celebrating their victory, and even Wuyi wore a faint smile, her pair of beautiful eyes slowly sweeping over her all-too-familiar subordinates, seemingly inspecting them for the first time, trying to see into the depths of their hearts and discover if they had been hiding something. After a while, with a thoughtful look still on her charming face, she waved her hand and ordered, "Return!" As she flew towards the starship, all the other cultivators followed close behind. The main hatch of the starship slowly opened, and those who had remained aboard stood there to welcome the triumphant return of their crewmates. Never before had any of them experienced such a battle. The Black Rock Beast Pack they encountered this time were the largest they had ever seen, and all of them had lost hope that they would be able to survive. But to their great surprise, they had actually emerged victorious without even paying that great a price, only a dozen dead in battle with the others having some minor wounds. Such a victory was worth celebrating. Yufeng, get some of the uninjured to repair the damage to the starship. 2 hours from now, I want everyone who was involved in the battle to assemble in the main hall. I have something to say, Wu Yi said quietly. Grinning widely, Yufeng was boasting about how brave and gallant he had just been when he heard this order and immediately nodded. I'll see to it. After watching Yufeng assign a few people who were familiar with repairing the starship to the task, Wu Yi walked towards her own room. The victory just now was completely unexpected. So naturally, she had to figure out what had happened, but before that she wanted to clean up her blood-stained clothes. Inside his room, Yang Kai sat cross-legged, his divine sense carefully examining his body, particularly the 100 drops of golden blood, unable to hide the joy and surprise on his face even though his eyes were closed tight. He had no idea that the power of a single drop of golden blood would be so massive. When he saw Wu Yi and the others fighting just now, Yang Kai had suddenly come up with the idea to use a drop of his golden blood. He had only wanted to provide them with a bit of help while testing out the power and usage of his golden blood, but the results had wildly exceeded his expectations and directly resolved the crisis. Yang Kai had used a single drop of golden blood to display the heaven-punishing spear from his 9 heavens divine skills while employing his divine sense and comprehension of the Tao of space to deftly control its movements even as he remained on board the starship. What most satisfied Yang Kai, though, was that even if the drop of golden blood had separated from his body, it still felt like a part of himself, like one of his hands or feet, allowing him to control it without any kind of obstruction even across a great distance. A drop of golden blood was the result of 3 months of Yang Kai's hard work. The Saint Qi he could cultivate over the course of 3 months was all condensed into a single drop, which explained how it could possess such power. This kind of golden blood was thousands of times more precious than his previous yang liquid, and its might was also incomparable. However, using a drop meant losing a drop, and unlike his yang liquid, which could be replenished casually, the pure golden blood required a long period of accumulation to condense, making Yang Kai feel a little distressed. Yang Kai also wanted to know what other uses the golden blood had other than as a weapon. If Great Demon God was alive still, perhaps Yang Kai might have been able to obtain some inspiration from him. After all, Great Demon God's comprehension of the golden blood was definitely more profound than his own. Unfortunately, Great Demon God was long dead, so Yang Kai could only rely on himself to slowly explore the golden blood's mysteries. While Yang Kai was studying his golden blood, all the cultivators who had previously participated in the battle gathered in the starship's main hall. Many people assembled were smiling and discussing whether the young lady was going to grant them some kind of special reward and were all looking forward to what would happen next. Only Yufeng and foreign elder Changqi exchanged a glance and guessed what Wu Yi's intentions were, bringing all these people together. After waiting for a short time, Wu Yi appeared in an enchanting long green dress, her arrival catching everyone's attention as shallow smiles began creeping onto their faces, while a fascinated look flashed across their eyes, one they couldn't extricate themselves from. Even while not concealing his own enraptured gaze, Yufeng began slapping the heads of a few of his ruder companions while gnashing his teeth and shouting, "Wipe those grins off your faces, you fools! Since when did you all degrade into horny dogs? Brother Yufeng, why are you hitting us? Your face ain't any better than ours. Some people held their heads and complained. Father here only admires the young lady. It's different from you lot. Don't you understand what appreciation is? Yufeng coldly snorted, and having said so, with a flattering smile on his face, he rushed over to Wu Yi and said, Young lady, everyone has been gathered. Please speak your mind. Wu Yi nodded gently, her pair of beautiful eyes sweeping across her group of uncouth and rowdy subordinates. As her eyes passed over them, each of these delinquents puffed up their chests and restrained their smiles, putting on their best heroic look. Yufeng diligently brought over and offered a chair, allowing Wu Yi to take a seat and say, You're all quite fierce. Why didn't I notice before? I always thought you were just a bunch of mixed fish waiting for death to take you, but it seems I've been very mistaken. Many people didn't comprehend the not-so-subtle ridicule in Wu Yi's words and began grinning broadly, trying to act humble by saying that the young lady was praising them too much. Wu Yi snickered, watching her subordinates bragging about themselves while faking humility when it was obvious that each and every one of them was growing more pompous by the breath. Unable to take it, Wu Yi slammed her fist against the arm of her chair, smashing it to bits as she ground her teeth and shouted, Are you all not clear why all of us are still standing here? Do you think I'm really praising you? One crowd of mindless fools. Even though Wu Yi was reprimanding them like this, everyone was still laughing merrily, not showing the least bit of shame or anger. Being scolded by a beautiful woman was an honor, and all of them knew that although Wu Yi's words were harsh, they didn't reflect what she felt in her heart. Whoever it was, step forward and reveal yourself. Don't think you've managed to conceal yourself. This young lady already knows who you are. Don't think you can play tricks in front of me? Wu Yi shouted as she gazed at the crowd. Everyone present felt she was looking at himself. Everyone's expression immediately became serious as they remembered the golden spear which had suddenly appeared in the previous battle. Finally understanding why Wu Yi had ordered them here. The young lady clearly wanted to uncover the owner of that golden spear. Lala. At least a dozen people stepped out from the crowd, each of them wearing an apologetic expression as they fidgeted restlessly and shamelessly proclaimed, Young lady, in fact, I didn't want to say anything, but since you've found me out, I won't hide it anymore. Wu Yi rubbed her temples in frustration as her pretty face filled with helplessness because she found that even Yufeng had included himself among these dozen or so people. Realizing that she had still been underestimating the shamelessness of these bastards. The crowd immediately fell into chaos as these dozen or so men began clamoring about how that golden spear was their own masterpiece which they secretly cultivated. None of them willing to give in, raising a huge ruckus. Young lady, foreign elder Xianxia, who was very old, walked over to Wu Yi with crossed arms and as the corner of his brow twitched declared, Do you not know what quality of goods this lot is? That golden spear could not possibly belong to any of them. Wu Yi let out a sigh. Then who did it belong to? In addition this group of blowhards there is only Xianxia aboard our starship, but during the fight with the Black Rock beasts Xianxia was still inside, and he is only a third-order saint. It couldn't possibly have been him. Xianxia thought about it for a while before proposing. Perhaps a great master who happened to be passing by unintentionally saw our plight and took action to help us. A passing master? Wu Yi frowned. Does foreign elder Chang know of any master on Shadowed Star who uses such an artifact? Xianxia shook his head. Young lady, that golden spear didn't seem to be an artifact. Not an artifact? Then was it a martial skill? It's also not like a martial skill. This old master was paying close attention to that spear during the fight and noticed that it exuded an amazing vitality. Although it was in the form of a spear, this old master always felt it was closer in nature to a living creature. I also noticed its shocking vitality. Wu Yi nodded. But why didn't that master who saved us make an appearance? They could have at least let us know who our savior was. Xianxia smiled slightly. There are many powerful masters who do not like publicizing their names. Perhaps in his opinion saving us was only a slight effort. But his slight effort managed to save several dozen of our lives. Young lady doesn't need to worry, as long as that person is from our Shadowed Star, We will one day come to know his identity, and it won't be too late to offer our thanks at that time. Our family isn't one that cannot understand gratitude, but young lady, if in the future you come to know the identity of this master, you must be careful when speaking with them. Such powerful masters are often subject to shifting moods. On top of that, this time's matter may not even be remembered by them. What foreign elder says makes sense? Wuyi nodded slightly, glancing back at the still arguing crowd who were trying to snatch up credit, snorting in the next moment as she shouted, "If you continue acting so shamelessly, I'll confiscate all your rewards for this time's expedition." Once these words came out, the several arguing men went silent, none of them daring to let out a single squeak as they bowed their heads. "We still have a month's journey back to Shadowed Star, so remain vigilant. I won't tolerate any mistakes," Wuyi reprimanded before getting up and leaving. After she left, Yufeng snorted before turning to the crowd. "Good. Now there's nothing left to fight over. You fools, why did so many of you come forward all at once? Couldn't you have left this credit for father to eat up? Calling you all comrades, is this Yufeng's greatest disgrace?" The dozen or so people who had just been clamoring rolled their eyes and ignored the outraged Yufeng, quickly leaving to take care of their own business. Inside his room, Xianxia was in a state of meditative cultivation when Wuyi rushed in and without a hint of politeness sat on her usual chair, her full chest bouncing slightly as she sat, making for a spectacular view. Xianxia opened his eyes to glance at her for a moment before closing them again and continuing to meditate. After waiting for a while, Wuyi saw him remain motionless and took the initiative to say, "I'm quite angry." Xianxia sighed, knowing there was no way he could continue to cultivate. This young lady was a beauty, but her persistence was another matter altogether. Each time she came, she wouldn't give up until she drew out some stories from him, as if she had been starved for conversation for hundreds of years. Seeing Wuyi sitting there with a sour face waiting for him to ask her about it, Xianxia sighed helplessly and spoke, "Who provoked you? That group of stinky men. Why are they all so brain-dead?" All they could think about was snatching up the credit for themselves. "Xianxia, are people in the outside world like this too?" Xianxia thought about it for a moment before saying, "I don't know about others, but I do know one situation where men become incredibly stupid." "What situation?" "When they're facing the woman they like. They'll often do stupid things just to attract her attention." Wuyi contemplated his words for a while before bursting into laughter and nodding. "What you said makes sense. In fact, they're usually not that stupid, at least not to that extent, but every time I pass by, their intelligence seems to drop. If they didn't act that way, how else could you show off your smarts? Do you mean that I'm stupid? You want to say that the only way I can look better is if they act dumb?" Wuyi immediately became unhappy. "I didn't say that. You're thinking too much. If you weren't smart enough, no one would dare let you take charge of this starship, much less entrust their lives to you. As long as you know," Wuyi snorted, apparently quite satisfied with Xianxia's answer, suddenly changing the subject. "Did you know that just now, while we were fighting outside, I thought we would all die? We've never encountered such a large pack of black rock beasts before. If they had destroyed the starship, perhaps less than 30% of us would be able to escape with our lives. But suddenly a golden spear appeared to help us resolve the crisis." "Xianxia, what kind of person do you think the master of that golden spear is? You were watching the whole time, right? Did you notice anyone suspicious?" "Nope." Xianxia shook his head. Wuyi stared at him deeply, seemingly unintentionally saying, "If that person was willing to identify himself, I would offer him my sincere thanks." Xianxia sat in place, his expression completely unmoved, as if he was an old monk who had found enlightenment and was indifferent to the world around him. After a long time, Wuyi simply sighed. "1 month later we will return to Shadowed Star. Take a good rest. I can see that you still haven't completely recovered. Was your foundation damaged? I'll have someone bring you some pills and Saint crystals." Xianxia nodded, not refusing her kindness. Shortly after Wuyi left, a cultivator came and delivered Xianxia 10 high-rank Saint crystals and a few Saint-grade high-rank pills, saying it was the young lady's hope that Xianxia could restore himself before they returned to Shadowed Star. Xianxia thanked him for this before accepting it. Looking at the 10 Saint crystals and handful of Saint grade high-rank pills, Xianxia couldn't help feeling a bit complicated. Previously, Wuyi had accepted 500 high-rank Saint crystals from him. But Xianxia was fairly certain she had not taken sole possession of those and had instead split them up amongst all her subordinates. Although everyone hadn't received much, for a time they were all wearing beaming smiles. From this display alone, Xianxia could tell that these people lived very poor lives. Now Wuyi had directly delivered him 10 Saint crystals, fully demonstrating her innate kindness. And so, Xianxia continued his silent cultivation. After storing up on Saint Qi for a time, he would come out and walk around the starship. Although this ship was small and seemed to be quite old, it was clearly well maintained by Wuyi and her crew. Even the floors and windows were cleaned daily. It was obvious they valued the starship more than their lives. Xianxia wasn't one of Wu Yi's subordinates, so there were some restricted areas on the starship, such as the power room. He couldn't go, but other than that, he was able to move about freely. The other cultivators on board also gradually became familiar with Xianxia, and as a foreigner, he was often subject to their curiosity and forced to tell them stories of the outside world. Time flew by and the starship drew closer and closer to Shadowed Star. As they approached home, the mood of the several dozen cultivators on board became more and more joyful. They had all set out on a dangerous journey to mine the nearby star and experienced many hardships along the way. So now that they were about to return home with a full load, naturally they were quite happy. Even Wu Yi was infected with this kind of celebratory mood and in recent days had not run over to pester Xianxia. Finally, the huge shadowed star appeared in everyone's eyes and within the starship, loud cheers rang out. Xianxia, who was meditating in his room, was shaken awake and quickly walked outside to take a look through the corridor window. An unimaginably large star soon appeared in his eyes, causing Xianxia quite a surprise. So big, Shadowed Star was enormous to a ridiculous degree. Xianxia had spent several years in the star field now and had been to a number of different cultivation stars, but none could compare to the grandeur of Shadowed Star. It was at least 10 times bigger than Hung Luo Chamber of Commerce's water-moon star, a true behemoth amongst the starry sky. At a distant location, an even larger sun star gave off a radiant glow that bathed Shadowed Star in light. Orbiting Shadowed Star were 7 or 8 moon stars, each one at least the size of Rainfall Star. I heard that Shadowed Star was the largest cultivation star in the entire star field. Is that true? Wuyi asked suddenly, having arrived beside Xianxia at some unknown point. A somewhat smug look on her face as she saw his surprised expression. No matter how much she wished to leave Shadowed Star and explore the vast outside world, this cultivation star was still her homeland and she took great pride in it. I don't know if that's true, but I'm certain it would be difficult to find another cultivation star comparable to this Shadowed Star, Xianxia answered seriously. In fact, the world energy of Shadowed Star isn't bad. It's just that its size is too immense, so compared to other cultivation stars, the aura's density seems a bit thin, Wuyi said quietly. I also heard that long ago, there were many other cultivation stars in our region of the star field and we had not been cut off from the outside world, but due to some unknown reason, a great change occurred in the starry sky and those smaller cultivation stars disappeared, leaving behind only the largest Shadowed Star. A series of crises followed that strange change, and with the lack of materials, especially Saint crystals, it became impossible for us to reproduce the glory of our ancestors, and even communication with the outside world was gradually cut off. Now it is only outsiders who come to us. It is very rare for those from Shadowed Star to go venture outside. While she was narrating this story, Xianxia didn't interrupt, simply standing there and listening quietly. Suddenly Wuyi turned towards Xianxia and said with a face filled with confidence, My dream is to reconnect Shadowed Star with the outside world, so that any time our people want to go see the outside world, they will have an opportunity to, never having to worry about lack of Saint crystals or cultivation materials again. Xianxia turned to meet her gaze and gave her a big thumbs up. Those who have ideals were worthy of respect. Compared with Wu Yi, Xianxia couldn't say he had much of a purpose in life right now. He simply wanted to get stronger as quickly as possible. My family is not strong, and I do not have much status or support within it. So Xianxia, I want to ask you to help me. The look of appreciation on Yang Kai's face stiffened as he heard Wu Yi's proposal, a bitter smile soon appearing on his face as he asked, "Your last words were your true purpose, right?" Wu Yi cutely spat out her tongue, silently acknowledging her guilt. Yang Kai laughed dumbly, wondering why Wu Yi had been speaking so sentimentally today. It turns out she was having ideas about recruiting him. Mulling over various thoughts for a moment, Yang Kai soon shook his head and said, "I'm just a small third-order saint. What can I do to help you? I don't know what you can help me with, but at the very least, you come from the outside and know far more about it than I do. You'll know which forces we can look for to cooperate with and supplement the knowledge I lack. It's all right even if your strength is a bit low," Wu Yi said sincerely to Yang Kai. Yang Kai's brow furrowed. He had quite a good opinion of this woman who looked gentle and weak on the outside but was in fact strong on the inside and determined to pursue her own ideals. Unfortunately, he really didn't want to get mixed up with others at this point. Yang Kai felt he was just a passing traveler to Shadowed Star, and perhaps it wouldn't be long before he set out again. Hastily agreeing to Wu Yi's request here would be too irresponsible. But looking into her pure eyes, Yang Kai couldn't bear to outright reject her. After silently grumbling to himself for a while, Yang Kai finally said, "I heard you say that your family is attached to a sect called Shadow Moon Hall, right?" "Yes, Shadow Moon Hall is one of the biggest forces on Shadowed Star. My Haiku family are attached to Shadow Moon Hall. There are many small clans and families like ours on Shadowed Star that have no way to survive without the shelter of such great forces." "I understand." Yang Kai nodded slightly. This kind of thing was also commonplace on Tongxian realm. The Haiku family that Wu Yi belonged to was just a peripherally attached force. So Yang Kai estimated their status was quite low and their family strength shouldn't be too strong. "What's the level of the strongest masters in your family?" Yang Kai asked again, although she didn't quite understand why Yang Kai had suddenly taken an interest in such matters. Wu Yi quickly answered, "Foreign Elder Changqi is one of my family's strongest." Yang Kai was stunned. "Do you not even have an origin returning realm master?" Wu Yi couldn't help rolling her eyes at his question. "Do you think origin realm masters are cabbages? Can you help me?" Yang Kai smiled bitterly. "It seems your dreams are quite far from your grasp. It will be impossible to achieve what you want without enough manpower and powerful masters. And become the matriarch of your family first. When you accomplish that, I'll consider helping you." "You'll consider helping me?" Wu Yi trembled with anger upon hearing this. She had sincerely invited him, yet even she could tell that Yang Kai was simply being perfunctory here. Grinding her teeth, Wu Yi even wished she could viciously bite him. "Good. When you gain control of your family, if you still have such ambitions, I will help you." Yang Kai stared back at her burning look without any fear. "Since you've said it, you better mean it." Wu Yi smiled immediately, extending her delicate white hand to Yang Kai. Yang Kai helplessly shook his head and shook her hand, sealing the agreement. "Just you wait. Within 2 or 3 years, I'll definitely become the family's leader," Wu Yi declared with full confidence. Seeing her like this, Yang Kai couldn't bear to tell her that when she became head of her family and considered many others' issues from that position of authority, she would quickly discover that her priorities were very different from her current thoughts. Right now, she was simply pursuing her dreams without any other concerns. But in the future, she would have to consider the livelihood of her entire family, and those burdens and restrictions would even more ruthlessly shackle her wings. Time would grind down a person's spirit and force even the most hot-blooded person to mature. The starship broke through the cloud layer of Shadowed Star and descended slowly to a large landing square. At the square, someone who had already received word of their return was waiting to receive them, and when Wu Yi saw who this figure out the starship's window, she couldn't help waving both her hands and calling out happily, "It's Uncle Howen!" Yufeng also grinned broadly. "Our trip is also considered an important task. Senior Howen will naturally come out to meet us in person. Young lady, after we get back, we'll be properly rewarded, right? All you think about is your reward." Wu Yi rolled her eyes before laughing lightly. "Rest assured, the ore we mined this time is quite precious. There'll definitely be enough compensation." Hearing her say this, The cultivator gathered nearby immediately cheered. With a dull thud, the starship landed and the hatch slowly opened. With Wu Yi at the head, and Changqi following close behind, a large crowd filed out with their heads held his, like soldiers returning in triumph from the battlefield, bringing honor and glory with them. The old man named Howen greeted them quickly, while a number of cultivators from the Haiku family, who were standing behind him, also approached and saluted. Many thanks for young lady's hard work. It is what I should do. Uncle Howen is too polite. Wu Yi smiled. This old man can finally rest easy knowing young lady has returned safely, Howen declared with a look of lingering worry. Everyone understood just how dangerous it was to navigate the star field aboard a starship. Wu Yi's trip this time had lasted longer than a year, and many people who cared for her safety had not slept well since she left. Howen was one among them and enthusiastically greeted. Young lady, please come back to the family. Patriarch and the other elders are very worried about you. I'm sure they will be happy to know you've returned safe and sound. Wu Yi smiled but shook her head lightly. There's no rush, and we'll first unload the ore from the starship before heading back. Hearing this, Howen's face froze up, but he quickly fixed his expression and put on a strong smile. Such matters do not need the young lady to handle personally. Someone will naturally process it. Wu Yi stood for a moment before nodding. Fine. Saying so, she shouted to the crowd behind her. You lot stay here and help transport the ore back. Yes. Yu Feng and the others shouted loudly. No need. We'll take care of it ourselves. A voice suddenly called out, and the moment Wu Yi heard who it was, her smile disappeared and was replaced with a strong look of disgust, her beautiful eyes glancing over towards the side. From the direction of the sound, Wu Yi spotted a group of cultivators rushing over towards them headed by a young man of short stature. This young man was impishly short, his head only reaching partway up Xianxia's chest, but although he was short, he took highly exaggerated steps and threw out his chest like he was a mighty expert, the smug look on his face fully illustrating his undisguised disdain for those around him. Xiahong won. Wu Yi's eyes narrowed dangerously as she angrily shouted, Why are you here? Why can't I be here? The young man named Xiahong Wen grinned meaningfully. Although this is your Haiku family's land, it can also be regarded as my Shadow Moon Hall's territory. If I want to walk here, that is my business. And little sister Wu Yi must have worked hard this time. I heard you even went deep into the star field. You must have collected a lot of rare ores. What does that have to do with you? Wu Yi immediately became vigilant. What doesn't it have to do with me? Xiahong Wen laughed before pointing towards the starship. The ore inside this thing is now the property of my Shadow Moon Hall? Didn't anyone tell you? Wu Yi's face paled, and Yu Feng and the others also fumed with anger. Wu Yi turned her head towards Howen, expecting him to give her an explanation. Howen met her gaze with a guilty look and only after a long silence let out a long sigh. Young lady, let us first return. The patriarch will give you an explanation. An explanation? Wu Yi sneered, immediately understanding what was happening here. Her blood running cold as she icily spat. In order to collect these ores, we set out with more than 100 people, but only half of us were able to return. Do you know what kind of dangers we encountered? Do they how many waves of black rock beasts we had to fend off? Do you know we were almost wiped out and unable to return? Who do you think we went out to collect these ores for? Now we return home with a full load and you want to tell us we can't even enjoy the fruits of our labor? What kind of explanation do you plan on giving us? This series of questions made Howen close his mouth tightly, the shame on his face only growing thicker, as if he couldn't wait to find a hole to crawl into and disappear. Not only was Wu Yi incredibly angry, her tender body trembling with rage, the 50 or so cultivators behind her were also spewing murderous intent as all their eyes stared menacingly towards Xiahong Wen, their strength secretly condensing. Xiahong Wen remained motionless though, his disgusting smile still plastered all over his face as he looked provocatively at Yu Feng and the others, as if he couldn't wait for them to attack and make the situation even bigger. Young lady, this is the family's decision. Howen finally managed to put out a few words while turning an imploring look towards Wu Yi and all but begging, Please take the bigger picture into consideration, young lady. Wu Yi was not a little girl who didn't understand propriety. She knew that the family had made such a decision because it was powerless to do otherwise, and that if she remaining unyielding here, it would only bring greater disaster to her and the people behind her. Her delicate hands balling up into tight fists, the anger on her face gave way to helplessness as she let out a heavy sigh. I understand. Young lady, Yufeng called out loudly and seemed to want to say something more. Enough. Your rewards won't be short. Even if the family can't provide it, I will find a way to compensate you. Wu Yi gave him a stern glance. Tears began dripping from Yu Feng's eyes as he lowered his head. Xie Hongwen clapped his hands lightly, sarcastically giving his approval of this show as he let out a laugh. I heard that little sister Wu Yi possesses a noble spirit, and I've certainly seen so today, truly deserving of your reputation, having so many unruly men act so obediently to you. Big brother here is impressed. Who is your little sister? Who is my brother? Wu Yi glared at him in disgust. Xie Hongwen, I'll tell you now, this starship's ore is soaked with the blood of my Haiku family's clansmen. It was mined with our very lives. I hope you won't have nightmares after being haunted by the grieving dead after seizing this from us. Xie Hongwen's face went cold for a moment, but his smile soon returned. Wu Yi, I know you're dissatisfied, but what of it? If you want to blame someone, blame your family for being so weak. And one day though your surname will be Xie and you will be the Xie's woman, just wait and see. Saying so, he let out a peal of even more dissolute laughter and waved his hand. Whoever dares to stop us from taking this or kill without mercy. The cultivators behind Xiehoni when immediately put on aggressive looks as they rushed into the starship. Return. Wu Yi didn't want to stay and see this ugly display, and a deep coldness filled her pretty face as she led the several dozen cultivators behind her away. After over a year of hard work, traveling deep into the star field to mine this ore, it had actually fallen into another's hands the moment they returned to Shadowed Star. This was nothing less than torture for everyone present. The mood of Wu Yi's team was completely depressed, but Yang Kai could clearly see that all of their eyes were red with madness. He believed that as long as Wu Yi gave the order, all of them would not hesitate to attack Xie Hongwen in order to defend their precious cargo. Yang Kai had originally planned to part ways with Wu Yi as soon as they arrived on Shadowed Star, but leaving right now really wouldn't be appropriate. So with no other choice, he simply followed along with the others. After thinking about it for a moment, Yang Kai whispered to Yufeng, Does that Xie Hongwen have some kind of grudge with your young lady? Yufeng's anger had not subsided yet, and when he heard these words, he couldn't help shooting Yang Kai a glare before shaking his head. There's no enmity between them. It's just that he wanted to marry the young lady a few years ago, but was rejected by her. After that, he became angry out of shame and began oppressing our family at every chance he could. Is that guy so strong? He is nothing. Yufeng spat disdainfully. Without the protection of Shadow Moon Hall, I can kill him instantly. But his father is an important figure in Shadow Moon Hall, so he can act unscrupulously. My Haiku family is just a minor attached force of Shadow Moon Hall, so no matter how he bullies us, no one will try to uphold justice. Brat, you're a bit too curious about this, aren't you? Let me warn you. Don't even think about trying to take Wu Yi from me, otherwise I'll beat you bad enough your mother won't recognize you. Yang Kai gawked for a moment before smirking. Rest assured, I won't steal her from you. And I already have many women. Yufeng's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets as he stared in shock towards Yang Kai, glancing over him as he asked, Is that true? With just your pitiful strength, how many women could you have? What do you use to protect them? Yang Kai shrugged and didn't say any more. Yufeng seemed to have discovered something of great importance and immediately rushed over to Wu Yi's side, acting mysterious as he whispered something to her. After a moment, Wu Yi looked back at Yang Kai. His brow furrowed slightly as a look of disbelief spread across her face. Yang Kai's face turned black, knowing that Yufeng was trying to smear him. But after hearing this strange anecdote, Wu Yi's mood seemed to improve slightly and her tight expression gradually relaxed, a slight smile even reaching her lips. The Haiku family's manor was not far from the square where the starship had landed, only about 50 kilometers away, so after a short while, the crowd had arrived. Wu Yi, Haowen, and Changqi naturally separated from the group to report to the other elders of the family, while at the same time ask them to give her an explanation. Everyone else also dispersed into the manor and soon disappeared. A moment later, only Yufeng and Yang Kai remained. Yufeng scratched his head and muttered, Young lady told me to entertain you well, but after thinking it over, I don't know what to do. I've never had any experience in this area. Yang Kai laughed dumbly and waved his hand. You can go about your own business, and I'll just take a stroll around. Do as you like. Father here also happens to have something to do. And don't go to the local village, that's the place where the family lives. You can stroll around anywhere else. If you get bored, you can go check out Tianyun City. It's about 200 kilometers in that direction. Sure. Yang Kai nodded. Shadowed Star was very different from other cultivation stars in that it had an incredibly strong gravity. Yang Kai previously discovered that the larger the cultivation star, the greater the gravitational pull. There seemed to be a direct relationship between the two. The force of attraction Shadowed Star put out was particularly violent, incomparable to any other cultivation star Yang Kai had visited before. Cultivating in this environment would result in greater benefits than other cultivation stars. On top of that, the world energy here wasn't as thin as Yang Kai had expected. While it wasn't as good as Rainfall Star or Water Moon Star, compared to Tongxian Realm, it was nothing short of paradise. Yang Kai was quite satisfied with this place. After struggling aimlessly through the star field for several years, Yang Kai felt he should find a place to settle down for a while and properly cultivate. Only when he was strong enough would he be able to act freely. Wanting to find Su Yen in this vast star field was like finding a needle in a haystack. But Yang Kai had come up with a feasible method to accomplish this, one he had successfully used before. That was to make his name known so that it echoed throughout the entire star field. That way, no matter where Su Yen was, she would be able to find him, drastically decreasing the amount of blind searching the two of them had to do. Back on Tongxian Realm, Hu Jiaoer and He Meier had quickly been able to find Nine Heavens Holy Land and obtain Yang Kai's help because of his great fame. This process would take a long time, but it was much more reliable than flying about like a headless fly. Yang Kai was prepared to spend dozens or even hundreds of years to achieve this wish. He doesn't care about time, because no matter how long it was, he believed the bond between him and Su Yen would not weaken. The same was true of little senior sister. When Yang Kai was strong enough, he would return to Tongxian Realm and bring her and the rest of his loved ones out into the star field. Shadowed Star would be the place where Yang Kai took the first steps on this endeavor. After walking around the Haiku family's manor for a while, Yang Kai became somewhat bored and was just about to set out for Heavenly Fate City when he saw a star shuttle soar out from the grounds. Yang Kai clearly saw Wu Yi's figure standing on that star shuttle. Thinking about it for a moment, Yang Kai summoned out his own star shuttle and followed after Wu Yi. Yang Kai didn't know what happened, but from Wu Yi's look, he could tell she was in considerable distress. Even flying a couple kilometers behind Wu Yi, Yang Kai could make out the sound of her sobs. Wu Yi didn't seem to be flying aimlessly, and after a while she landed on a barren mountain and sat down alone at its summit, curling her head down into her green dress as she held her knees with both her hands. Yang Kai landed behind her but didn't know what to say to comfort her, so he simply stood there silently waiting for her to calm down. Wu Yi's delicate shoulders trembled, seemingly realizing that someone was approaching her. Looking back to discover it was Yang Kai, then crying even louder. Yang Kai immediately became more flustered. It took a while, but eventually Wu Yi stopped crying, and after wiping the corners of her eyes, she stared pitifully at Yang Kai and said, "Don't tell anyone else." Yang Kai quickly nodded. "It's too unfair," Wu Yi said, choking on her words. "So many of us died to collect that ore. Yet after only a few words the family handed all of it over to that bastard Xiahong one, not even preparing a decent reward for us. Small families have the sad fates of small families. Hasn't this happened more than once or twice before? Why do powerful people like to bully the weak? Is there no fairness or justice in this world? If I stood in a high position, I would never do such a thing," Wu Yi shouted indignantly, venting the frustration in her heart. "Don't they understand what chilling the hearts of the people mean? Once the will of the people runs cold, the family will be no more. Why are they so short-sighted? Is acting so servile just to maintain their feeble existence worth it? When you really stand in such a position, you may be able to appreciate that helplessness. Which side are you on? Wu Yi glared at Yang Kai in annoyance, angry that he was not agreeing with her. Yang Kai quickly raised his hands. All right, all right, all right. You speak. I'll just shut up and just listen. As if obtaining his permission freed her somehow, Wu Yi opened the floodgates and began talking about all the grievances and injustices she had suffered over the years, and regardless of whether Yang Kai was willing to or not, he was forced to listen to how her family was too weak, how Shadow Moon Hall was too overbearing, and how she felt such great frustration with her own weakness. She seemed to have endured a lot of pressure and torment. After going on for quite some time, Wu Yi's mood finally eased up, though her eyes were now swollen like peaches. Turning to stare into Yang Kai's eyes, she then asked, "Was that golden spear you're doing?" Yang Kai shook his head decisively. This woman really had some suspicions. After all, she knew her subordinate's abilities well. The only one she wasn't clear about was Yang Kai, who they had picked up halfway. "It really wasn't you?" Wu Yi seemed a little unconvinced. "Why do I always feel like you're not as weak as you appear?" Yang Kai had to admit that the intuition of this woman was quite terrifying, but he still smiled and said, "I am just a third-order saint. Even if I have some hidden means, how much strength could I possibly display?" Wu Yi stared at him for a moment before slowly shaking her head. "I don't know. It's just that when I face you, I can't help feeling a sense of pressure. I have a feeling that if we were to fight, the one who would suffer defeat would be me. I believe my instincts." "You think too highly of me?" Yang Kai continued to deny, quickly changing the subject. "I actually came here to say goodbye to you." "Goodbye?" Wu Yi was stunned. "Where do you want to go? Do you know anyone on Shadowed Star?" "No, but don't try to recruit me. I won't join your family." Wu Yi smiled. "Presumably my little family cannot enter your eyes. Although your cultivation isn't high, in the end, you come from the outside and have clearly weathered your share of great storms. Good, so be it. If you insist on departing, I won't try to detain you, but between us we still have an agreement." "Don't tell me you've forgotten." "Of course I haven't forgotten." "Then don't leave." Wu Yi stood up and stretched her waist exaggeratedly, letting out a sigh as she unconsciously showed off her fantastic body line, not even paying the weird look in Yang Kai's eyes any mind, tapping her foot a few times and saying, "How about if I give you this barren mountain?" "Give it to me?" Yang Kai was stunned. "This Dragon Cave Mountain is part of my personal territory. It has a long history in my family, and although there are no precious treasures or rare ores, the world energy here doesn't lose out to other places. I often come here to enter secluded retreat. The scenery here is also very good. Yufeng and his gang often come over as well. In any case, since you have nowhere to go, you might as well just stay here. If you want, from now on, this place is yours." Yang Kai frowned and observed Wu Yi for a while, and after discerning that she wasn't joking, he asked in surprise, "Are you really willing to just deliver me such a big piece of land?" Wu Yi laughed playfully. "Clearly you don't know. On Shadowed Star, such a piece of land isn't worth anything at all. Shadowed Star is far too big, so even if my Haika family is just a tiny force, our territory stretches several thousand kilometers in every direction. What does a trivial mountain count as? Haven't you encountered similar situations on other cultivation stars?" Yang Kai nodded, realizing that such a piece of land was truly worthless on Shadowed Star. "Why are you trying so hard to have me remain? You couldn't have taken a liking to me, right?" Yang Kai became somewhat vigilant. Wu Yi gawked for a moment before bursting into a fit of laughter. Yang Kai's face went dark. "What are you laughing at?" Wu Yi waved her hands and said, "I know you have a lot of women, and those women like you, but you shouldn't think too highly of yourself. I'm just thinking about supporting my family. I haven't even considered the matters between men and women yet, but even if I did, I wouldn't look at a man who already has many women. That would be best." Yang Kai snorted slightly, suddenly feeling a bit disgruntled. "So it's settled?" Wu Yi smiled at him. "I'll stay here for the time being. As you said, I have nowhere to go anyway." Yang Kai shrugged. Actually, this place is quite good. Heavenly Fate City is only about 50 kilometers in that direction, so if you ever want to buy anything, it will be quite convenient. Right, you probably don't have any living goods on you now. I'll have Feng bring some things over to help you set up some proper accommodations. You can live here with peace of mind. Don't think too much about it. Just treat it as a kind of stopover. When the day comes that I take command of the family, don't try to back out. Yang Kai grinned and somewhat disagreed. He felt that it would take at least several dozen years for Wu Yi to take charge of the Haiku family. Yang Kai followed Wu Yi across a few mountains before coming to a deep cave where traces of someone sitting in meditative cultivation remained. Wu Yi explained that this was her handiwork. The cave seemed quite deep and extended straight into the mountain belly. There was a small spring nearby that converged into a pool with crystal clear water inside the cave. The conditions here are somewhat harsh, but it's at least quiet and spacious. And, if you want, you can actually live in my house together with Feng and the others. No, this place is good. Yang Kai shook his head. In any case, it was just a place to stay, so it didn't really matter where it was. Although this cave was a bit solitary, the world energy aura was far richer, making Yang Kai very satisfied. Then I'll leave you to get familiar with this place. I have to go back. I still need to distribute the rewards I promised those guys, Wu Yi said before flying off. After Wu Yi left, Yang Kai carefully examined his new home. Although the mountain spring ran through the cave, the environment was not humid or damp and was very suitable for living. This cave was formed naturally and was twisted and confused with no decent stone rooms carved out. Releasing his divine sense, Yang Kai examined the surrounding 1,000-kilometer radius and quickly discovered that what Wu Yi said was not an exaggeration. There were no spirit grasses, spirit medicines, or mineral lodes worthy of attention. Apart from the slightly rich world energy aura, it was just a mountain. No wonder she had given it away so freely. Yang Kai knew that Wu Yi was trying to retain him because he had come from the outside and knew far more about it than anyone else she could come across. This was what Wu Yi valued the most. As for his strength, she probably didn't even think about it. Wu Yi had great ambition to allow her family to rise to prominence. But Yang Kai also had a lofty goal: to become famous throughout the star field. The two had different aspirations, but both would need to work hard at them for many years to achieve results. Yang Kai suddenly felt that this might be a good springboard through the Haiku to Shadow Moon Hall, and then to Shadowed Star, then to the rest of the star field. He would promote his name. When that time came, he wouldn't have to worry about Su Yan not knowing about him or coming to find him. Thinking so, Yang Kai was suddenly filled with hope for the future.